Chapter 2646. Wu Zimo grinned ferociously. His body was undergoing a terrifying transformation. It was as if he was absorbing all the essence in the world. He was devouring the essence of all the opponents he had killed in the past. He had kept these essences and had never used them before. He had originally planned to use them when he broke through to the king-ranked realm, but it seemed that there was no way to delay it any longer. If he continued to delay, he might not have a future. Every one of these geniuses had lived for many years. 4 ordinary sages at the peak of the king-ranked realm. They had no way to break through that barrier. However, these geniuses were different. They had found a way to break through over a long period of time. It was only for the opportunity on the Kerfus Road that they did not choose to break through. Once they had made up their minds, there would always be a way to break through. This was where they were different from others, and where even those old antiques could not compare. After this battle, whether I am willing or not, I will break through to the king-ranked realm. I will use your life as a sacrifice for all this. I have had enough of all these years. I want everyone to know my name. I want everyone to tremble when they hear my name. Wu Zimo's aura was becoming stronger, and stronger. Although he had been suppressing it all this time to prevent himself from breaking through to the king-ranked realm and being killed by the Kerfus heaven, it had climbed to another limit. Everyone present was shocked. That was because those geniuses had almost reached the pinnacle of the sage plane, and they could not go any further than that. Once they went beyond that, they would not be able to remain at the pinnacle of the sage plane, and they would probably break through to the king-ranked realm. This was the situation that Wu Zimo was in now. After this battle, no matter who won or lost, Wu Zimo would have to face the heavenly tribulation of the king-ranked realm. He would not be able to escape. The real danger was here. As one's cultivation and strength continued to increase, they would soon be unable to suppress the growth of their cultivation. The longer they dragged it out, the more dangerous it would be. That was why these geniuses did not dare to use this move, even though they knew that this might be their last chance to fight for the opportunity to become a king-ranked realm. If they were not careful, they might be killed on the Kerfus Road. That would be terrible. However, even they had to admit that the power of this move was too great. Wu Zimo's strength continued to rise to the point that even they felt a little fearful. After using this move, Wu Zimo had already surpassed them. Wu Zimo had a hideous look on his face. He was in extreme pain as he charged towards Yi Shiwen. His body exuded a terrifying aura. His combat power had risen to the extreme. Boom! The most terrifying battle took place. Chaos spread out completely at this moment, petrified by the stone aura. It could almost affect the legendary time and space. A single strike had shaken the sturdy Kerfus heaven. Such power had surpassed the limits. In fact, everyone could clearly sense that a dignified will was awakening, as if it had been provoked. Everyone's hearts tightened, because they all thought of the most terrifying legend. According to the legend, if a king-ranked expert dared to enter the Kerfus Road, the will of the Kerfus Road would be stimulated and awakened, and then the invader would be killed. The will that they were feeling now should be the terrifying will that guarded the Kerfus Road and could kill a king-ranked expert. And all of this was obviously caused by Wu Zimo. His cultivation level was close to the king-ranked realm, and he had reached an extremely dangerous level. It had been too long since anyone dared to challenge the boundary of the king-bestowed realm on the Kerfus Road. Therefore, even the monstrous talents and the old antiques did not know how terrifying it would be if the legendary will were to awaken. They were secretly annoyed. What if that will regarded them as Wu Zimo's accomplices and eliminated them together? They could not help but feel nervous. Even the experts of the heavenly race who were setting up the array were terrified. There were too many legends about that will. They could not help but feel nervous. However, Wu Zimo did not care about that at this moment. With a strike, he awakened the will of the Kerfus heaven and attacked Yi Shiwen directly. Boom! The boundless starry sky seemed to have exploded in an instant. It exploded all around Yi Shiwen's body. It had actually broken Yi Shiwen's body-protecting golden body. This was the first time that Wu Zimo had broken Yi Shiwen's defense. While everyone was shocked by Wu Zimo's strength that was close to the limit, they were also shocked by Yi Shiwen's terrifying strength. Even if it was them, if they did not raise their battle strength to the limit, they might be seriously injured in a single strike. However, Yi Shiwen was only forced to use his protective golden body. In fact, he was not seriously injured. How could they not be shocked? It was a miracle. At this moment, they finally understood why Wu Zimo had to release all of his strength at such a critical moment. It was not that he had lost his mind, but he had been forced to the limit by Yi Shiwen. If he did not release his ultimate strength, he would definitely not be a match for Yi Shiwen. If it were them, they would also have to do the same. This was a kind of helplessness. Many people were shocked. Were the newcomers so terrifying now? Even Ji Renwang, who killed his way into the Kurfürst Road, did not seem to be so powerful. Not only did he enter the Kurfürst Road for the first time, but he could also suppress the monstrous geniuses. This was no longer something that could be explained by extraordinary talent. It was simply abnormal. Yi Shiwen, stop struggling. You will not be a match for me. Although Wu Zimo's brows were slightly furrowed because he did not seriously injure Yi Shiwen with one strike, he was extremely confident in his heart. It had skyrocketed to an unprecedented level. How could a mere Yi Shiwen be a match for him? Even he himself was afraid of his current state. It was a feeling that he had never felt before. This is the result after you released all of your strength? I think it is nothing more than this. Yi Shiwen said lightly. In the face of absolute strength, being stubborn is useless. Wu Zimo sneered as if he had seen the most ridiculous thing in the world. Boom! In an instant, the sword in the stone unleashed a dazzling stone luminescence, which pierced through the sky. The stars in the sky shook violently and turned dim. It was as though their brilliance had been snatched away. The resulting shockwaves reduced some of the protruding mountain ranges to nothingness. Fortunately, the battle between the two was completely on the edge. Otherwise, such a level of battle was enough to cause public anger. Human Dao Fist. Yi Shiwen blasted out a human Dao world with one punch, contending with Wu Zimo, who had already turned into a Stone-Chi world. The fierce confrontation between the two worlds was simply unimaginable. Bang! With a loud roar, Yi Shiwen's human Dao world was shattered. Although the quality of his world was extremely high, it was forcibly broken by Wu Zimo. The remaining Stone-Chi did not slow down and fell on Yi Shiwen's body. However, it was completely absorbed by the bloody radiance that emerged from his body. At this time, Yi Shiwen did not seem to hide anymore. Tianyuan mirror directly flew out and enveloped him in it. This blow seemed to have shaken even Yi Shiwen. His brows slightly wrinkled. Not bad, but is this all you've got? If this is all you've got, then you can't beat me, Yi Shiwen said indifferently. Pretending to be mysterious and bluffing, Wu Zimo only sneered. In his opinion, Yi Shiwen was just bluffing. Even a king-ranked master would not dare to underestimate his attack, let alone a mere sage in the middle stage. It was already nature-defying for a sage in the middle stage to be able to perform to such an extent. It was impossible for him to be stronger. However, he could also feel that the bursting power in his body was burning brighter and brighter, making it impossible for him to delay any longer. With a loud roar, he charged towards Yi Shiwen. Boom! 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 The battle between the two went all the way from the ground into the void, leaving the ground of the Kurfürst heaven. The stars in the sky fell in batches, making the sun and moon lose their light. Wu Zimo's sword chi swept across the sky, turning hundreds and thousands of stars into ashes. Yi Shiwen's fist pierced through the sky, and another large part of the universe collapsed. Both sides seemed to have exploded to the extreme. Under the support of such terrifying power, both sides seemed to have gone mad. But relatively speaking, everyone could see that Wu Zimo, who had already gone mad, was a little stronger. His combat power had exploded to the peak, while Yi Shiwen seemed to have used up all his strength. Had he really reached his limit? Although Yi Shiwen was strong, he had not reached the peak of the sage plane. This kind of strength at times had its limits. Just like Wu Zimo's methods, he could not reach them. This was the difference between the planes. Sometimes it seemed that one could challenge those of a higher plane, but the methods that those of a higher plane had were something that those of a lower plane would never know. The battle between the two continued. Wu Zimo's strength continued to grow as he continued to make breakthroughs, and his attacks became more and more frenzied. It was because he knew that he did not have much time left, and everyone else also knew that Wu Zimo's remaining time was extremely important. As long as Yi Shiwen could hold on, this time, Wu Zimo would not be able to do anything to him. In the future, when Yi Shiwen also entered the king-ranked realm, it would be the time for both sides to truly decide who was the winner and settle their grudges. At that time, it would be a battle between two invincible kings. However, this was what they thought. Yi Shiwen clearly did not think so. Wu Zimo, is this your limit? What a disappointment. Chapter 2647. Wu Zimo, is this your limit? I'm so disappointed. Yi Shiwen panted slightly after breaking the remaining sword aura with a punch, looking a little embarrassed. In the battle just now, his spiritual power was consumed extremely quickly. He was only in the Sage Realm middle stage, but he had to exert combat power beyond the peak of the Sage Realm. One could imagine how huge the consumption of spiritual power was. If it were not for the Phoenix regeneration technique, he would not have been able to hold on. Even the support of the Phoenix regeneration technique was not unrelated to him being able to exert such combat power. Otherwise, these geniuses would not have been able to fight against those of a higher level as easily as eating and drinking. But they were defeated by Yi Shiwen. If it were not for the invincible divine art, they would not have been able to do it. No matter how tough you are, it's useless. Wu Zimo sneered. Compared to before, Yi Shiwen was extremely embarrassed. He seemed to be able to see victory waving to him. Finally, he could eradicate this scourge. He had tried his best. If he could not even kill Yi Shiwen like this, then he would no longer have the confidence to face Yi Shiwen in the future. Today is the day you die, and I will be the judge. Wu Zimo was extremely confident, but just when he was about to attack again, the opposite Yi Shiwen had completely changed. Yi Shiwen sneered and said, "Is that really the case? Since that's the case, it's just as you said. This is the final battle, and there's no need for me to hide my strength. I'll let you see the gap between us. What monstrous genius that surpasses the limits. In my eyes, it's nothing." Continue to be stubborn. Before Wu Zimo's voice trailed off, he saw that Yi Shiwen seemed to have released some shackles. The aura on his body had obviously climbed to the limit, but now it continued to climb at an even more amazing speed and constantly strengthened. The terrifying wave set off from his body even directly blasted a huge hole in the sky. Countless stars were just brushed by the waves released by him and turned into nothingness. At this moment, Yi Shiwen seemed to have become the supreme emperor between heaven and earth, dominating everything. All the coercion was released to the limit. This change immediately attracted everyone's attention, even in the midst of a fierce battle. This was because this aura was too terrifying. Even with their strength, they trembled. It even surpassed Wu Zimo, who had released his strength to the peak. They had not felt this way in a long time. It was almost as if they were about to face a true king-ranked formidable martial artist. What shocked countless people even more was that Yi Shiwen had actually concealed his strength. He hadn't released all of his strength as they had previously thought. Even if his strength was already above theirs, it still wasn't his limit. So, what was his limit? Everyone was shocked. For the first time, these geniuses who had their eyes on the top of their heads felt terrified. They realized that they were not at the peak of their level, and this was the most terrifying thing. For hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years, they had always felt that while they had not broken through to the king-rank plane, they had definitely reached the pinnacle of the sage plane. It was only now that they realized how laughable they were. They had been frogs in a well. If Yi Shiwen had really reached the pinnacle of the sage plane, then perhaps they would feel better. But at this moment, Yi Shiwen was only in the middle stage of the sage plane. Even they could see this. A sage plane in the middle stage had actually reached the pinnacle that they, who were in the middle stage of the sage plane, could not reach. What a joke! This was simply the funniest joke in the past millions of years. Whatever pride and self-esteem they had held onto in the past, it was as if they had been slapped hard in the face. It turned out that the people who had been frogs in a well were actually themselves. Some of them even had their Tao heart wavering. The worldview that they had always believed in had collapsed, and there were even signs of chi deviation. At their level of cultivation, it was almost as difficult as ascending to the heavens to have chi deviation. Their willpower had long been as firm as a rock and could not be shaken. But now, such an extreme situation had happened, which shocked them. Interesting, although it was the same words, this time, Ji-Run Wang wasn't as relaxed as before. He also felt a strong pressure. He had a huge secret on him, so he was confident that he was above ordinary geniuses. But now, when he saw Yi Shiwen, he suddenly felt a sense of amazement. Even if you look at the long river of history, I am afraid that those who can reach this level are very rare. What geniuses! In his eyes, perhaps they are really not worth mentioning. The people he wants to compare himself with are those who have entered the enlightenment plane in countless years. That is what he is chasing after. Ji-Run Wang murmured to himself. It is coming soon, Yi Shiwen. I hope you do not disappoint me. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for me. Some things must be done. Since the heavens have given you such powerful talents and opportunities, there are some things that should be shouldered. Different from the shock of the others, he was still calm, as if there were still some tricks that he had not used. Yi Shiwen could feel the power after releasing the cultivation armor. It was getting stronger and stronger, and he firmly controlled it in his hands. This was different from Wu Zimo's power. Wu Zimo's power came from devouring the essence and blood of his former opponents. There were too many things that he could not control. Yi Shiwen's power came from his own cultivation. He just suppressed it and did not release it. Just like Wu Zimo before, he could already feel the majestic will of the First Heaven. It seemed to be a warning, and he could understand the meaning behind it. It was clearly telling him not to act recklessly. Once he exceeded a certain limit, the will would instantly erupt with a powerful force and obliterate him. But he was not worried because he knew that although he was infinitely close to the strength of the King Realm, he was still a little bit away. Why? Why are you so strong? Wu Zimo actually began to feel a little nervous. He never thought that Yi Shiwen not only hid his strength but also to this extent. It was simply subverting his imagination. Do you really think that I can't beat you? This is just a test. Yi Shiwen said calmly. Indeed, as Yi Shiwen said, he was just testing Wu Zimo's strength. It should be said that he was using Wu Zimo as an example to test the limits of these demon prodigies. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will always be victorious. Yi Shiwen, who had tried to break through to the King Realm once and failed, knew better than them what the strength of that realm represented. It was far beyond their imagination. That time, when he failed to break through to the King Realm, it seemed like he did not gain anything. But in reality, it allowed him to improve further and reach a level that no one had ever reached before. Otherwise, when he faced Wu Zimo's strength, he would be flustered and would not be able to fight back. The so-called supreme, the so-called invincible, one is enough. This path is too narrow. It cannot accommodate others. Yi Shiwen said calmly. This sentence completely shocked many demon prodigies. If Yi Shiwen had said something like this before, they would have scolded him for being arrogant. Now, for some reason, they agreed with him. It seemed like they had been trapped in this realm for too long and had already accepted that there were others who were on par with them. They could no longer find that invincible and invincible mentality they had in the past. Many people faintly felt that their state of mind had broken through, and their cultivation levels were getting restless. They actually felt like they were about to break through to the King Realm. If this was any other time, it would have been fine. However, this was not the right time to break through. They cursed under their breaths and hurriedly suppressed their cultivation levels. At this moment, they also understood Wu Zimo's helplessness. At that stage, there were some things that could not be helped. Impossible. I don't believe it. Wu Zimo suddenly roared as he charged forward. The stone sword that he was waving became tens of millions of feet long as it slashed down viciously. The galaxy trembled, and a huge crack appeared in the sky of the universe. It was extremely frightening. Bang! His attack landed viciously, but it was caught by Yi Shiwen with one hand. Yi Shiwen could not break through his attack. Yi Shiwen exerted a bit of force, and this 10 million feet long sword light disintegrated inch by inch in front of everyone's eyes. The entire Milky Way collapsed along with the sword light's disintegration. It looked incomparably terrifying. This is the end. Use the stone sword that you are best at to leave. Yi Shiwen's shout turned into a terrifying sound wave that spread out in all directions, annihilating countless stars. The whole scene looked incomparably terrifying. At this moment, a stone sword had appeared in Yi Shiwen's hand. It was Wu Ziyu's stone sword. Compared to the stone sword in Wu Zimo's hand, it was still slightly inferior. However, in Yi Shiwen's hand, a light that was even more dazzling than the one in Wu Zimo's hand erupted. It was as if all the limits had appeared. Wah! The sword light slashed out, and the sky instantly shattered, engulfing everything. Countless stars shattered and slashed fiercely on Wu Zimo's body. Wu Zimo wanted to struggle, but there was no way. He only felt that his body could not move at all. He was locked by a terrifying will. Boom! The sword light slashed on Wu Zimo's body and immediately caused a terrifying explosion. In this explosion, Wu Zimo was slashed into nothingness. There was not a bit of flesh and blood left. It was as if this person did not exist in this world at all. In an instant, the nothingness of the sword destroyed everything. Yi Shiwen really used the stone sword that Wu Zimo was best at to annihilate him. Everyone was shocked, but suddenly at this moment, a voice suddenly shouted, "Not good. The opportunity to become an emperor has arrived." Chapter 2648. Everyone was still immersed in this sword. This sword was too frightening. Even they could feel an extremely frightening threat. It was a direct threat to their hearts. This feeling was different from the pressure of a king-rank martial artist. It was a completely new kind of pressure. While they were shocked, they were also extremely fearful of Yi Shiwen. If it was any other day, it would be fine. Once they broke through to the king-ranked realm, it would be a brand new start. They would not lose confidence. However, this concerned the opportunity to become a martial emperor. To a large extent, the strength of one now depended on the strength of one's strength. Therefore, in everyone's reaction, they were extremely fearful of Yi Shiwen. They could not allow him to act recklessly. Yi Shiwen also felt the change in their emotions. If this went on, he was likely to become everyone's enemy. Even if he did not have much ambition for the opportunity to become a martial emperor. However, people had to believe it first. The reason why he was here now was mainly because no matter who obtained the so-called opportunity to become a martial emperor, it could not fall into the hands of the heavenly race. Otherwise, it would undoubtedly be a huge disaster. Oh no, the opportunity to become a martial emperor has arrived. A loud shout came from afar. Everyone looked over, only to see that the sky seemed to have been torn apart by a terrifying force, and a huge pillar of light shot down, directly into the great formation of the Tian clan experts. In the great array, a silver-haired handsome young man stood in this huge light beam. He opened his arms as if he was welcoming the arrival of something. Then, a ball of emerald green light was slowly torn out of the crack along the huge light beam. It began to fall slowly and was about to enter the body of the silver-haired handsome young man. Even if they had not eaten pork, they had seen a pig run. At the same time, the 9 thrones began to emit intense and dazzling light. 8 powerful figures that made people despair appeared in the sky. They seemed to be protecting the ball of emerald green light. "Kill. We cannot let the heavenly race get it. Get out of my way." Instantly, the elites of the various races went completely crazy. If they had held back some strength before, they no longer had the slightest bit of hesitation. What was even more terrifying than the opportunity of choosing an emperor being snatched away by others was that this opportunity of choosing an emperor was obtained by an expert of the Tian clan. It wouldn't be long before the Tian clan produced another invincible monarch who would rule the world. When that time came, once the exiled heavenly race returned, it would be a disaster. Finally, you are here. Suddenly, Ji Renwang walked out from the crowd. Before the other heavenly race experts dared to stop him, a shocking light appeared in his hand. A green lotus was released from his hand. This green lotus carried an unparalleled and indescribable majesty. It bloomed and turned into a terrifying current that rushed out. But to everyone's surprise, the target of this green lotus was not the silver-haired young man from the heavenly race, but the ball of green light in the sky. Everyone knew that it was the opportunity to become a martial emperor. Therefore, everyone's target was the silver-haired young man. No one's eyes were looking at the ball of green light. Because even so, the silver-haired young man could not obtain the opportunity to become a martial emperor, and they could not obtain the opportunity to become a martial emperor either. In this case, what was the purpose of their hard work for tens of thousands of years? This terrifying current swept out. In the middle of the green lotus, it directly turned into a golden sword. This sharp sword emitted an extremely powerful aura. It was the aura of the world's ruler. Everywhere it passed, it instantly swept out. It had almost exceeded the limit that the Cursed heaven could bear. It triggered the arrival of the terrifying will. However, it could not stop the current and was directly swept away. This was unimaginable. It should be known that if the will was angry, even a king-ranked expert would die in its hands. Now, it was actually swept away by the sword light of the green lotus. Why do I clearly feel the will of two peerless martial emperors from this sword lotus? How can this be? The frightening will that was spreading out made these demon-level martial artists feel an urge to kneel down. This was unbelievable to them, given their strength and abilities. Even if they were to face a legendary king-rank martial artist, they would not be in such a sorry state. What's more, Zhang Yi's will alone could force them to kneel. This was probably only something that could be done by a martial emperor. Everyone was very clear that although Ji Renwang had the bloodline of the Ji clan, he was actually a disciple of the martial arts sect. Therefore, it was not strange that he had the aura of any peerless martial emperor. After all, there would always be some methods that could achieve such an effect. However, how to have the will of two peerless martial emperors was something that no one could imagine. Although this was theoretically possible, it was only in theory. Once two peerless martial emperors met, wouldn't their auras clash? However, Ji Renwang had done it. It was as if he had used some ingenious method to accomplish it. Ji Renwang, what are you doing? Everyone was furious. No matter how they dealt with the silver-haired young man from the Tian clan, it was to fight for the opportunity to become a martial emperor. However, if the opportunity to become a martial emperor was destroyed, what was the point of them fighting for? What is your martial arts sect trying to do? The last time the opportunity to become a martial emperor appeared, you were beaten back by the Qin emperor. Now, you want to destroy our opportunity to become a martial emperor. What are you trying to do? One of the old antiques was instantly enraged. Back then, he had also participated in the Kerfur's Road. At that time, he had seen with his own eyes the terrifying scene of the Qin emperor beating back the Kerfur's sect. He could never forget that scene. It was like a nightmare. Even after countless years, he could not let go of the knot in his heart. Later on, the Qin emperor soared to the sky and finally became a martial emperor. From his point of view, his slow progress was related to the Qin emperor and the martial arts sect. At this time, seeing Ji Renwang's actions, he was instantly enraged. However, he was not the only one at the scene. Almost everyone was enraged. The experts of the Tian clan were also completely crazy. Kill him. We can't let him go crazy. The experts of the Tian clan shouted one after another. However, it was to no avail. They could only watch as the huge sword lotus swept across the sky and directly bombarded the opportunity to become a martial emperor in the sky. How dare you? Everyone seemed to have heard a loud roar coming from the sky. The reason why it sounded like was because this voice seemed to be directly imprinted in their hearts, and it wasn't coming from someone else. Everyone's heart shook, Yet they saw that the 8 extremely terrifying figures on the 8 thrones had suddenly appeared in front of the torrent of sword lotuses, and they blocked their path. The aura of these 8 powerful figures had risen to the peak. Indistinctly, they could see that they were already superior to many of the monstrous geniuses. They even had powerful strength and aura that even the experts of the King Realm did not have. They had completely surpassed the limit of strength on the Curfirst Road. It was as if something had been stimulated and awakened. This was a terrifying power. Boom! The first to attack was one of the wild beasts. One could barely see that he was crawling on 4 legs. It did not look like a beast, but it did not look like one. However, it looked like a combination of many beasts. In an instant, 10,000 beasts roared and turned into a torrent that welcomed the sword lotus. Boom! The 2 sides directly collided. The terrifying power set off a wild wave. Just as the shock wave was about to hit the silver-haired expert of the Tian clan below, another figure made a move. He casually brought up an ancient formation and actually turned the terrifying collision into nothingness, protecting the people of the Tian clan. That ball of dark green light was still slowly descending. Everyone could see that any one of these 8 figures had unimaginable power. Many people guessed in their hearts that they could not be the 8 invincible experts who had obtained the opportunity. If that was the case, it could be explained. After all, they were the emperors who once dominated the heavens and the realms. Usually, the appearance of one of them was already terrifying enough, let alone so many of them appearing together. If that was the case, then everything was serious. It seemed that the previous supreme experts were really going to join forces to protect this silver-haired young man of the Tian clan. Could it be that he was the chosen successor of the opportunity on the Curfirst Road in this generation? It should be known that there had never been such a situation in the past. Basically, it could be said that everyone relied on their own strength. Only the strongest person who won would be able to take away the opportunity. This was also why everyone was so afraid of Yi Shiwen. From the strength that he had displayed, Yi Shiwen was undoubtedly above everyone else. It was just that now, if the opportunity of the Curfirst Road had a spirit and chosen its own successor, then everything would be completely different. It was just that no one knew how the experts of the Tian clan did it. Boom! The sword lotus vaguely transformed into 2 invincible figures as well, and they charged towards the 8 phantoms. The 8 figures stood in the void, and the terrifying laws of destruction could be seen everywhere. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked. If the silver-haired young man of the Tian clan was not under the protection of layers of formations, he would have long been turned into nothingness. Yi Shiwen, are you still not going to make a move? This opportunity of the Curfirst Road is simply a disaster. You must not let it come into being. Suddenly, Jiren Wang saw the 10 figures fighting in the sky. That power had already exceeded the limit. He suddenly became a little anxious and shouted at Yi Shiwen. Chapter 2649. Yi Shiwen was also stunned. He didn't expect that Jiren Wang would look for him, because he was also stunned. He could understand that Jiren Wang didn't want the heavenly race to obtain the opportunity to become an emperor, but how could he directly destroy the opportunity to become an emperor? If he hadn't already figured it out, he would have gone crazy at this time. Once the opportunity to become an emperor was destroyed, it would truly be the end of the road for everyone. Over the years, only Emperor Qin relied on his own strength to prove his Tao. The others were more or less related to the opportunity to become an emperor. One could imagine how many people were eyeing this opportunity to become an emperor. Why? Yi Shiwen quickly asked. It's a long story, but I'm not very clear about it. I only know that my mission is to destroy this opportunity to become an emperor. This is not only my idea, but also related to the Yellow Emperor, the Qin Emperor, and the 2 Emperors. Jiren Wang couldn't help but smile bitterly, because there were many things that even he himself wasn't very clear about. Although Jiren Wang had said nothing for a long time, but Yi Shiwen's heart had tightened, because he had mentioned 2 emperors, and either one of them had once shaken the world, and had created a supreme and illustrious existence. Both of them had once dominated a region, and were invincible. Both of them had once saved the weak human race. The Yellow Emperor and the Ji family had brought the human race to glory for the first time. The Qin Emperor, on the other hand, had brought the human race back to glory. Even now, he was remembered by all. What was this opportunity to become an emperor? It was able to make the two emperors make such a unanimous decision. Even a supreme genius like Ji Run Wang had to carry such a mission. There must be something that Yi Shiwen didn't know about, so he didn't dare to look down on it. It's good that it's destroyed. Although Yi Shiwen didn't know what the opportunity to become an emperor was, he had already decided not to take this path. Either he couldn't reach the Tao, or he could rely on his own strength to fight his way out. However, he also understood that if the opportunity to become an emperor fell into the hands of others, then it was very likely that an invincible emperor would be cultivated. At that time, it would undoubtedly be a terrible threat to him. In that case, it would be better to destroy this opportunity so that no one could get it, and they would return to the same starting line. Up in the sky, the 10 powerful phantoms were fighting. However, it was clear that the 8 phantoms from the 8 thrones were being beaten back by the phantoms of the Qin Emperor and the Yellow Emperor. The 8 phantoms working together could only barely fight the Qin Emperor and the Yellow Emperor to a draw. The gap between the two sides was unimaginable. Yi Shiwen's heart shuddered. Could it be that there was such a huge gap between those who reached the Tao with their own strength and those who reached the Tao with the so-called opportunity? Both the Yellow Emperor and the Qin Emperor could fight one-on-one. Even if he didn't understand the matters of that realm, he could still see the strength of the Yellow Emperor and the Qin Emperor. It was far from what the others could compare with. This made him even more determined that he couldn't rely on this so-called opportunity. Since you were a scourge, then don't blame me. Yi Shiwen took a step forward. He held the Avicii sword in his hand and slashed down fiercely. Chains of principles appeared around the sword light and entwined around it. It brought forth a dreadful sword rainbow and slashed horizontally. It looked extremely terrifying. The entire Kurfürst heaven was shaking violently, and the will that had been threatening Yi Shiwen didn't appear. It seemed to have gone to deal with the phantoms of the Yellow Emperor and the Qin Emperor wholeheartedly. It actually didn't pose any threat to Yi Shiwen, allowing him to attack freely. This feeling made Yi Shiwen feel extremely carefree. Everyone was shocked. When he was just about to attack, everyone had already noticed that even at the most intense moment, they didn't forget to pay a part of their attention to Yi Shiwen, lest he snatch away the opportunity to reach the Tao. Now that they saw this attack, they couldn't help but reveal a completely shocked expression. The power of this attack had even surpassed the Sage realm, and it had already broken into the King-ranked realm. This was something that they could easily sense. It was so terrifying. What exactly was that peerless, murderous weapon in his hand? Some people had also heard of the legends about Yi Shiwen. It was said that he had a peerless, murderous weapon in his hand. Back then, when his strength was far inferior to his current strength, he used it to severely injure Wu Zimo. At first, this legend seemed to be true, but in the battle just now, they didn't even see Yi Shiwen use the Avicii sword, so they naturally thought that the legend was just a legend, and everything was just a rumor. Now it seemed that the legend was definitely not a legend, and it was true, and that peerless murderous weapon really did exist. It was just that Yi Shiwen had hidden his strength before and didn't use his full strength. Or rather, Wu Zimo actually couldn't make him use his full strength. It could only be said that Yi Shiwen was really powerful to the extreme. And what shocked them even more was that Yi Shiwen actually wanted to destroy the Kurfürst's opportunity. This attack was actually aimed directly at the Kurfürst's opportunity. Everyone was going crazy. What was going on? These humans were really going crazy. If it was just a fight for the Kurfürst's opportunity, it would be fine. But they were actually fighting to destroy this Kurfürst's opportunity. Why was this happening? Only some rational people seemed to vaguely think of something. It seemed that in the ancient legends, the Kurfürst road was simply a huge trap, a trap set up by an invincible person. It was just that as time passed, and because more and more people achieved the way, over time, such legends slowly became nonsense. Could it be that Ji Renwang and Yi Shiwen, the two human geniuses who had once created miracles, were actually fighting because of this. But in the eyes of others, these two guys were clearly trying to destroy the opportunity that others had, even if their own chances were small. They would rather everyone else not have such an opportunity, and this had completely angered everyone. Rumble! The blood-red sword aura slashed into the array formation of the heavenly experts. Although the defense of the array formation was very strong, this attack had already surpassed the Sage Realm. With Yi Shiwen's full strength, even the destructive power of the king-ranked realm had broken through. The entire array formation instantly cracked, and a huge force fell down along the pattern of the array. Many heavenly experts did not even have time to react and were pierced by this force, and then turned into a mist of blood. In one breath, the entire array formation was destroyed by half, and the remaining blood-red sword aura did not slow down at all. It crashed right into the Kerfur's opportunity that had just fallen. Bang! Visible to the naked eye, a small part of the Kerfur's opportunity was actually cut off. That ball of Kerfur's opportunity seemed to have a life of its own, and it began to wriggle as if it was convulsing in pain. Everyone was dumbfounded. The power of this attack was too great, and it had even exceeded their expectations. This was the power of the king-ranked realm. How could it appear in the Kerfur's road? This was not logical. Where was that willpower? As for the 10 powerful beings who were still fighting in the distance, they had already forgotten about them. Those terrifying beings were essentially beyond the scope of their understanding. Only Yi Shiwen's attack made them feel that it was not logical. Huff, huff, huff. Yi Shiwen kept panting, and his eyes were a little red. A fierce aura constantly wrapped around his body. He had already used this attack to its fullest extent, and he had mustered all the skills in his body to the peak. Even though he had reached the king-ranked realm, he still could not truly destroy that Kerfur's opportunity. But at the same time, this attack also allowed him to truly come into contact with the power of the king-ranked realm. The mysterious space madly deduced, and he actually managed to deduce a lot of information about the king-ranked realm. His mind was clear, and he was actually showing signs of breaking through. Once he broke through to the late stage of the Sage Realm, his battle prowess would truly break through to the king-ranked realm. However, he knew that this was not the time for him to break through. Even though he was already prepared, the power of the Sword of Avicii still shocked him when he used his full strength. His initial guess that the Sword of Avicii was a top-notch divine weapon was probably wrong. The 10,000 spell roulette was a top-notch divine weapon, and even he did not have such a hard time using it. The power of the Sword of Avicii was above that of the 10,000 spell roulette, and he could not even use the true power of the Sword of Avicii. He would probably have to truly break through to the king-ranked realm before he could unlock its profound meaning. That ball of Kerfur's opportunity was cut in half by Yi Shiwen's sword aura, but the remaining part was still approaching the silver-haired young man. It seemed like it was attracted by something, and its speed began to increase. Not far away, Ji-Run Wang still wanted to rush over, but it was useless. Unbeknownst to him, several of the 12 heavenly generals had already surrounded him. It was impossible for him to break through in a short period of time. Yi Shiwen, it's all up to you now. Ji-Run Wang transmitted his voice to Yi Shiwen as he launched a crazy attack. Yi Shiwen smiled bitterly and said, "Damn, do I still have to do this kind of work at a time like this?" In the Tianyuan mirror, countless celestial sources began to burn, turning into monstrous magic power that poured into Yi Shiwen's body, allowing him to quickly recover. No matter why I have to destroy it, its existence itself is a threat to me, so die. Yi Shiwen sneered, took a step forward, and directly rushed out. The will in the sky began to appear again, and even Yi Shiwen could feel it. Yi Shiwen, even if you want to mess around, you have to know when to stop. Suddenly, many figures blocked in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen looked carefully, and who else could it be other than the monstrous geniuses of the various clans? At this time, they were actually standing on the opposite side of him. He wanted to face these monstrous geniuses alone. Chapter 2650. At this moment, Yi Shiwen had become everyone's enemy. If he was only going to kill the silver-haired heavenly clan youth, he might be able to get help from others in secret. However, he was going to destroy the opportunity to become an emperor. Everyone might have realized that this opportunity to become an emperor had almost become a demon in their hearts. When they talked about something for hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years, it would become a kind of demon in their hearts. As if it had a special attraction, these peerless evildoers seemed to be controlled by something. It penetrated their hearts little by little. Only a few of them could comprehend it on their own. It seems that I have angered everyone. A smile appeared on Yi Shiwen's face. However, his eyes were fixed on the Emperor realm opportunities that were constantly falling down. He was a little anxious in his heart. The speed at which the Emperor's opportunity fell was extremely slow. It was as if it was being repelled by a terrifying force. It was as if there was some willpower preventing the Emperor's opportunity from falling. It seemed that it was not going so smoothly. It was not like what he had thought at the beginning. It seemed that everything was prepared. It seemed that there were still many Emperor's opportunity that was not pleasing to the eye. However, it seemed that it had already involved the invincible figures since ancient times. The battle and layout of that level was not something that he could participate in now. That's right, Yi Shiwen. It's not too late if you stop now. At this moment, a huge demonic eagle flew down. It was a ferocious bird with a green face and fangs. Its whole body was covered in demonic flames. It flew over. If you want to kill the remnants of the heavenly clan, I will help you. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Yi Shiwen stopped smiling and said coldly, if I say that I want to kill both of them, how impolite will you be? Even I want to see it. At this moment, he recognized the origin of this demon eagle. It was rumored that in the demon world, there was a race of demon birds called the demon eagle. The name was very ordinary because the ancestor who had created this race was a demon eagle that was very common in the demon world. Later on, no one knew what kind of opportunity he had encountered, but he actually became unstoppable and became one of the most formidable martial artists of his generation. Later on, he even battled with the Azura demon lord, who had yet to attain Tao for many years. The Azura demon lord was one of his strongest opponents, and he was almost extremely powerful. Later on, they even fought until the king-ranked realm without a clear winner. Later on, the Azura Demon King had another opportunity to achieve Tao. He killed one of his main opponents, the demonic eagle old ancestor, and unified the demon realm. However, this race did not go extinct because of this. Instead, it became one of the few royal races in the demon beast race. Its reputation was not inferior to the 8 royal races of the demon race. This demonic eagle was the youngest son of the demonic eagle old ancestor, Bummy. Because his father had been killed by the Azura Demon King, he had been brooding over it. He wanted to obtain this opportunity to become a martial emperor so that he could revive his race and rule the world. This race was also very powerful. Among the ferocious birds in the demon realm, they were almost the best. Originally, they could only be considered an ordinary bloodline. After the demonic eagle old ancestor, they became a powerful bloodline. The strength of their ancestors would also affect their descendants in the bloodline. No one was born noble. Bummy turned into a middle-aged man. His aura was soaring, and he had the aura of a king descending. His father was an invincible king who could go against the Azura Demon King. His brothers had also entered the king realm a long time ago. If he had not been so obsessed with this opportunity to become a martial emperor, he would have entered the king realm a long time ago. He could be said to be one of the strongest remaining monstrous talents on the road to becoming a martial emperor. He was one of the most ancient existences. Naturally, he had his pride. There were also legends that said that Bummy was actually from the same generation as the Phoenix King. However, the Phoenix King had already retired from the road to become a martial emperor countless years ago. He had made a name for himself outside and achieved the title of Phoenix King. Bummy was still bitterly searching for the opportunity to become a martial emperor. He had missed a few opportunities. He was the only person who had seen the opportunity to become a martial emperor several times. Because of this, he had witnessed many emperors obtaining the Tao. His heart was even crazier and more obsessed with this opportunity to become a martial emperor. At this moment, his eyes were completely red. It seemed like if Yi Shiwen said one more word, he would kill him. Junior, don't be too arrogant. Since ancient times, I've seen too many arrogant people who tried to go against the great powers of the world. In the end, they only ended up being crushed to pieces. Bummi's eyes flashed as he looked at Yi Shiwen. His ferocious expression was overflowing. In fact, if Yi Shiwen's ferocious performance hadn't shocked him, he would have already attacked him. As one of the few old seniors present, he was even older than many of their ancestors. The pride in his heart naturally couldn't be compared to ordinary people. At the same time, after experiencing the opportunity to become a martial emperor a few times, he was even more anxious. This was his last chance. If anyone wanted to take away his last chance, he would take their life. Even if Yi Shiwen had already displayed strength that had surprised them, they still couldn't believe it. However, the good thing was that Yi Shiwen's sword had almost reached the level of a king-ranked martial artist could unleash. However, he had probably used up a lot of his strength. At their level of cultivation, how could they not understand the difference between them? They had to pay a huge price to achieve such a result. The world's power? You guys are considered the world's power? You are just a group of people who have been blinded by benefits. What monster? What genius? It's all bullsh**. Yi Shiwen laughed coldly. Since he had started cultivating, the only belief that he had adhered to was to control himself. If even his greatest belief was controlled by others, then there was no need to talk about transcending cultivation. He was just a group of pitiful worms. I think you are really looking for death. Bummi instantly transformed into a frightening giant demon eagle and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. The entire sky was filled with the sharp sound of breaking through the air. Every time his wings flapped, the sky would burn with raging flames. In the ancient legends of the demon world, when the demon eagles of this race flapped their wings, even the void would be destroyed. The entire world would be engulfed in flames and completely destroyed. This giant demon eagle opened its bloody mouth and spat out a huge beam of light. It was like a laser cannon that swept across the sky. From afar, it seemed like everything was destroyed. It tore a huge crack in the space and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. Many monstrous geniuses couldn't help but be a little shocked when they saw this. This old fellow had been able to dominate the Kurfürst Road for so many years. His foundation and bones were really deep to an extremely frightening level. Is this all you've got? Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. He punched out with the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. The 6 paths of reincarnation disc appeared in midair and blocked this frightening beam of demon light. Many people were shocked when they saw this. He was able to block such an attack with just his physical body. Yi Shiwen's strength was even stronger than they had imagined. It didn't seem like he had just used a big move. However, they didn't know that Yi Shiwen cultivated the Phoenix regeneration technique. His recovery speed was first class, even in the world. He was talking nonsense with these people just now to buy time to recover. Otherwise, he would have already started a massacre. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. You are the successor of the Azura Demon King? At this moment, Bummi's shocked and angry voice sounded. He couldn't help but be extremely angry. Yi Shiwen sneered. What do you think? Clang! Bummi had transformed into his human form. A long spear had appeared in his hand. The spear's momentum was like a dragon, tearing through everything. Layers of space rippled as it mixed with a terrifying demonic power as it smashed towards Yi Shiwen. I don't care who you are. I don't have time to waste with you right now. Those who block me will die. Yi Shiwen blasted out a simple punch. His people Dao Fist transformed into a dreadful divine kingdom and blasted out. His martial arts had already reached a whole new realm at this time. He had turned complexity into simplicity. Simplicity represented the general trend of the world. Bang! Yi Shiwen's fist collided with Bummi's spear. The high-grade god artifact spear began to tremble violently, as if it had encountered the most terrifying of ravages. It produced a buzzing sound, as if it was crying out in pain. Poochie! Bummi's palm directly exploded. The force traveled through the long spear to his body. Then his entire arm exploded. Ah! Bummi cried out in pain as he knelt on the ground. Just one punch had caused his entire arm to explode. This kind of power was simply unbelievable. It should be known that their race's physical bodies were also extremely strong. Killing the dragon race was not difficult at all. Now he had ended up like this. Then, under the watchful eyes of everyone, the spear that was still hovering in the sky suddenly exploded, turning into specks of light that filled the sky as they flew out. He had exploded a high-grade divine weapon with his bare hands. Yi Shiwen had used his strength to change everyone's perception of him. It was simply a miracle. He had destroyed a high-grade divine tool with a single punch, and he had caused Ingbu Mie's arm to explode with a single punch. Wasn't this a little too abnormal? In the spatial storm caused by the spatial crack, Yi Shiwen's clothes fluttered. He looked like a god of war. "Ah, bastard, I'm going to kill you." Ing Bummy's eyes were red. The spiritual power in his body was burning. He seemed to have completely fallen into a state of madness. His hands, which had been blown apart by Yi Shiwen's strength, finally grew back. He directly grabbed towards Yi Shiwen. "Stubborn. If that's the case, don't blame me for being impolite." Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. He flipped his palm and suddenly summoned the stone sword. He rushed forward. Chapter 26:51. Ing Bummy's roar was still echoing in the sky. He had never suffered such a huge loss before. He had been seriously injured by a single punch. Even in the past, during the most brutal times, he had never felt like this. And the human in front of him was not even at the peak of the sage plane. This was even more humiliating, a huge humiliation. Yi Shiwen held the sword in the stone in his hand and did not use the sword of Avicii. In fact, this indirectly confirmed the speculation of the geniuses. Yi Shiwen could not continue using the sword of Avicii. He only took one step, and the entire Kurfürst heaven was shaking violently, as if an unknown, ferocious beast was running. It seemed that he was even more ferocious than the 10 invincible experts fighting in the sky. He only needed to stab out with his sword. A simple move. But the sword will of the ruler burst out and instantly destroyed all of Ing Bummy's attacks. Then, he chased after him and slashed hard on Ing Bummy's body. Boom! A terrifying explosion erupted from Ing Bummy's body. His entire body was petrified, as if he had encountered a shocking disaster. Then, he instantly shattered into dust. A genius at the peak of the sage plane had been completely annihilated by Yi Shiwen's sword. Who else wants to be with him? Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. He wanted to use Ing Bummy to intimidate everyone, but his thinking was wrong. He had completely underestimated the degree to which these people desired the opportunity to become emperors. Perhaps to them, there was nothing more important than the opportunity to become emperors. Although the monstrous geniuses didn't say anything, the fact that they didn't leave was already a representation of their attitude. It was an attitude that they wouldn't back down. No matter what, we will not let you do anything rash. This is the last opportunity. The six-eared macaque stood out and said slowly. He held a giant axe in his hand and looked extremely ferocious. He was a violent ape. The six-eared macaque said what was on everyone's mind. This was their last opportunity. At most, they could kill the silver-haired youth from the sky race. Even if they returned with the chosen emperor's opportunity, they would still have another chance. Although this chance was minuscule, it was better than nothing. And Yi Shiwen's attack on Ji Renwang was to destroy their last glimmer of hope, especially when this matter had already become an inner demon, which was even more unbearable for them. You people still want to intercept Yi Shiwen? Destroying this so-called opportunity to become an emperor is the decree of the Qin emperor. Who dares to go against it? Ji Renwang roared, but at this time, he was besieged by the experts of the heavenly race and was in a very difficult situation. They were afraid that Ji Renwang still had that terrifying sword lotus in his hands. If they let him release it again, then they would really be finished. This time, it was likely that no other sovereign emperors would come out to protect them. Humph, the Qin emperor is the sovereign emperor of your human race. What does his decree have to do with us? At this time, a powerful expert of the crystal race stood out. There was a bottle floating above his head, exuding multicolored light. This was a powerful divine tool that he had refined after cutting off his original body. The original body of the crystal race was a supreme, divine material, almost like a natural Holy Spirit, a bit similar to Wu Zimo and Wu Ziyu. However, they could also cut off their original body and refine a truly powerful divine tool. Yes, you want to use the Qin Emperor to suppress us? It's too simple. At this time, his words resonated with many people. Indeed, although the Qin Emperor was powerful, he was still the sovereign emperor of the human race. Using the decree of the sovereign emperor of the human race to control them was simply crazy. Only a few experts of the human race had already begun to retreat. The prestige of the Qin Emperor in the human race was close to that of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors of the past, and it was even more recent. Moreover, he had once saved the human race in the heaven world from a crisis, and he had supreme prestige in the human race, so how could they not be afraid? Moreover, the thing that the Qin Emperor was trying so hard to destroy was not as simple as they thought. Since ancient times, most of the legends about the Kurfürst Road were not so positive, and many of them were very, very negative. This made them even more hesitant, but these few evildoers of the human race were only a minority, and more people did not buy it. What does it have to do with you? Do you dare to say such words when the Qin Emperor is still on the throne? Yi Shiwen's face revealed a somewhat sarcastic smile. The faces of these evildoers alternated between blue and white, but they became even more firm and did not have the slightest intention of retreating. Although the deterrent power of the Qin Emperor's decree was great, it was obviously not enough to resist the temptation of the opportunity to become an emperor. Let me fight with you. Perhaps, as you said, I may have fallen into the devil of my heart. Let me fight with you and eliminate this devil of my heart. 6 Ears Macaque held the giant axe in his hand and looked at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen suddenly understood. Among these people, not everyone was like Ing Bumie, who could not see through the devil at all. Some people had already seen through it, but they were unable to cut it off, so they placed their hopes on Yi Shiwen. Defeat them, cut off all their delusions, and return to the right path. Yi Shiwen took a deep breath. No matter what their motives were, these people must be defeated. In the distance, the opportunity to become an emperor was already falling, and it was getting closer and closer. He really did not have much time left. Boom! A monstrous spiritual power erupted from 6 Ears Macaque's body, and it was like a shocking thunder. Every pore on his body was spewing out a shocking amount of blood energy, and with every step he took, the sky and earth in the distance seemed to collapse. No one would have thought that he would be so powerful, and he was even more powerful than the average evildoers. He had hidden himself very well all these years, and the 6 Ears Macaque's cunning was evident from this. Many of the evildoers who had a history with 6 Ears Macaque were now very excited, and they were thinking that after they got out, they must kill this scourge. Otherwise, they would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. 6 Ears Macaque walked out step by step, and the sky and earth shook. The mountains and rivers were shaking, and the entire Kurfürst Road was shaking. His entire body's blood energy pierced through the sky. Finally, 6 Ears Macaque's aura rose to the peak, and he was like a demon. The spiritual power in his body surged, and his blood energy was mobilized to an extremely powerful level. He rushed towards Yi Shiwen. He finally made his move, and the giant axe in his hand swung down towards Yi Shiwen. The sky instantly exploded, and the mountains in the distance collapsed, and the earth was shattered. However, Yi Shiwen's countenance didn't change in the slightest. He just calmly attacked. In the face of this giant axe, he simply bombarded it with a punch. Boom! There was an extremely loud explosion, and it was like a tsunami and thunder. The sky exploded. At this moment, 6 Ears Macaque truly felt what Ing Bummy had felt before. It was not that Ing Bummy was too weak, but rather that Yi Shiwen was too terrifying. He was simply a monster. He had never thought that there would be someone who could be this strong. This was just a casual attack from Yi Shiwen, and he had not used his full strength. However, at this moment, it was clear that this 6 Ears Macaque's martial power was above Ing Bummy's. His palms split open, and blood splattered everywhere. His entire body was sent flying, but he did not suffer heavy injuries like Ing Bummy. This in itself proved that his physical body was above Ing Bummy's. Clang! At this crucial moment, another person made his move. It was Mr. Emptiness. A sharp sword appeared in his hand, and he swept it horizontally, bringing with him a sky full of sword rainbows that fell towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen pointed his finger, and it turned into a shocking sword aura that swept out, rushing towards Mr. Emptiness. Boom! A terrifying power collided with unparalleled power, sweeping out over 1,000,000 miles. Space completely shattered, and even the monstrous geniuses in the surroundings were greatly affected. Puff! Mr. Emptiness was sent flying, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with disbelief, and he was extremely resentful. He resented Yi Shiwen for being so strong. He was only in the Sage realm, so how could he be so strong? Yi Shiwen took a step forward and flew towards the Sky Clan Great Array. In his heart, he was still thinking about the opportunity to become a martial emperor. As for killing these people, that was not his goal at all. Stop him. We can't let him destroy the opportunity to become a martial emperor. This is our last chance. If we let him destroy it, we will never have a chance to break through again. Mr. Emptiness roared. What are you waiting for? Do you really want him to succeed? That's right, Mr. Emptiness is right. If we can't stop him, then what's the point of us fighting for hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years? It was the golden rock. As one of the leading birds in the world, it naturally had its own pride. As it walked, it brought with it rays of golden light in the void. It was as if it had traveled through space, and the imprints of the rules appeared. It was very frightening. It was a powerful master who had 1 foot in the king-ranked realm. In an instant, it had already rushed in front of Yi Shiwen, and it displayed a supreme martial art. 9 techniques of the heavenly rock. It let out a huge roar, and the sky was filled with golden light. It brought with it a terrifying aura, and it directly rushed towards Yi Shiwen. The 10,000 technique roulette appeared in Yi Shiwen's hand, and it firmly protected him. The 9 techniques of the heavenly rock created shocking ripples on the 10,000 technique roulette, and its power was astonishing. It was worthy of being one of the supreme martial arts of the Golden Rock race, but in the end, it was still unable to break through the defense of the 10,000 technique roulette. At this moment, Yi Shiwen finally moved. He had changed. He had become more ruthless, and he attacked decisively. He clearly knew that this matter was of great importance, but these people were still stubborn. This completely aroused his killing intent. Chapter 2652. Almost everyone present was famous in their own era. Some of them were peerless geniuses who had dazzled several eras. They were the elites of a generation and the essence of a race. However, they had all gone crazy at this time. Their madness was directed towards Yi Shiwen. They only had one goal, and that was to kill this man who had given them a chill in their hearts. The opportunity to become an emperor was too tempting. Just like mortals who were painstakingly searching for an opportunity to prove their Tao, they were also searching for an opportunity to attain Tao. Their hearts were painstakingly searching for an opportunity that couldn't be understood by outsiders. This rising star was already so powerful that they felt like they were suffocating. Some of the old-timers even thought back to the distant past, where there had been people who had been so domineering that they had eventually reached the deathless level. The existence of such a person was a terrible shadow for others. As Yi Shiwen had said before, invincibility belonged to one person. Only one person could deter the heavens and 10,000 worlds. At this time, the battle cries shook the sky above the horizon. The clamor broke through the galaxy and caused the vast earth to tremble violently. So many peerless, monstrous geniuses were attacking at the same time. What a terrible situation it was. It was as if the momentum was crushing the 9 heavens. Bang! Above the 9 heavens, Yi Shiwen, who was holding the stone sword, and the golden-winged rock collided. This was the collision of 2 supreme martial arts. It shook and split the sky. How could anyone stay still at this time? However, no one was burning themselves like Wu Zimo and releasing all the seals. After all, if they couldn't obtain the opportunity to become an emperor this time, they might have to come here again, and again until countless years later. Puff! The golden-winged rock was knocked flying. A terrible force was wreaking havoc on its body. It could kill the peerless, vicious bird of the Golden Dragon clan. However, it couldn't even block Yi Shiwen's attack. It was at a complete disadvantage in terms of physical strength. Yi Shiwen was like a human-shaped treasure dragon at this time. He was rampaging around, and no one could stop him. The stone sword in his hand swept out, breaking through everything, sweeping out a mighty sword radiance. Compared to Wu Zimo, its power was not inferior. His swordsmanship could even cut stars with his bare hands, let alone with such a divine weapon. Wu Ziyu could not unleash the true power of the stone sword at all, but because it was a companion magic treasure, it could be more compatible. It was completely different from Yi Shiwen's forceful refinement. He had already seen through many of the profoundness of the sword and the stone. This was one of the main reasons why he was able to defeat Wu Zimo so easily. Rumble! A series of explosions rang out. The sword chi from the sword and the stone swept through space, cutting through everything in its path. In a single moment, it had broken through everyone's attacks and even damaged quite a few god artifacts flying towards it. Many people were injured from afar, but under the stimulation of the blood, they became even crazier. Yi Shiwen was expressionless as he walked step by step towards the formation that the experts of the Tian clan had set up. At this moment, he was like the only god of death in the world. He was going to kill to prove his Tao and kill everyone. He threw out a punch. The 6 paths of reincarnation fist transformed into the 6 paths of reincarnation wheel and directly smashed an old antique to death. His physical body collapsed with a loud bang. In an instant, bone fragments flew everywhere, and it was incomparably bloody. This was an old antique who had dominated the world for countless years. He had lived in an era even longer than the ancestors of many monstrous geniuses. Now, he had died tragically at Yi Shiwen's hands. Compared to those unparalleled monstrous geniuses, these old antiques were more eager and more fearless. At the very least, those monstrous geniuses could still enter the king-ranked realm. However, these old antiques could not even enter the king-ranked realm. If they missed this opportunity, they might not have it again. However, in Yi Shiwen's eyes, these people were no different from ants. He had no intention of showing any mercy. He was like an unparalleled god of death. In his eyes, there was only the so-called opportunity to become a martial emperor. The earth was shaking, and the sky was collapsing. At this moment, a few terrifying beasts appeared in front of everyone. They were actually beasts with extremely rare bloodlines. These beasts did not belong to powerful clans, but they had ancient bloodlines. They were not inferior to those monstrous geniuses at all. Unexpectedly, they also rushed towards Yi Shiwen. Their bodies were the most powerful treasures. Therefore, they did not hold back at all and rushed over. Their claws clawed at Yi Shiwen, wanting to pierce through his skull. They were cold-blooded and cruel. They had suppressed their ferocity for countless years, and now they were completely unleashed. Although they did not belong to any clans, all of their ancestors were famous kings of the beasts. They had extraordinary martial skills that were sleeping in their bloodlines. As long as they cultivated to a certain level, they would naturally awaken. They were very terrifying. The sound of their huge claws cracking was deafening. The void was trampled, and the void was smashed. Their claws were comparable to high-grade divine weapons. "Those who block me will die," Yi Shiwen roared. He seemed like an eternal god of death. He suddenly stepped on the ground, and the space seemed to have turned upside down. It set off 1,000 layers of huge waves and expanded in all directions. The attacks of these fierce beasts were actually blocked. Moreover, this power was still spreading in all directions. Those fierce beasts that were originally aggressive were actually shaken and sent flying. They were simply not a match for this power. It was a complete mess for a while. Yi Shiwen's footsteps were still moving forward. No one could stop him. "Kill. I don't believe that he can hold on for long," Someone roared. Such a battle consumed a lot of energy, especially in order to suppress these monstrous geniuses. Yi Shiwen certainly did not dare to continue to hide his strength. He would die once his energy was exhausted. Puchis, a sword light, slashed down from the sky. This person's voice hadn't even faded when he was chopped into a mass of flesh and blood. His body exploded, and his primordial spirit was destroyed by the sword. His body was petrified, and he would never get a chance to resurrect again. This scene was incomparably cruel. It was incomparably ferocious and barbaric. Even the experienced and knowledgeable monstrous geniuses shuddered at this moment. Yi Shiwen suddenly stepped on the ground. His figure tore a phantom in the sky. He was rampaging. He wanted to kill his way out of the crowd of monstrous geniuses and old antiques. Puff! 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 Those monstrous geniuses and old antiques were sent flying one after another wherever he passed. They were either seriously injured or died tragically. It was incomparably chaotic. Many people were torn to pieces in the void. Golden divine blood splashed out unceasingly. Golden divine bones fell to the ground and triggered a huge earthquake. It was incomparably heavy. The bloodstains on these bones and flesh might not disappear even after hundreds of thousands of years. After all, existences of such level had once fallen here. This what's going on? Many figures appeared in the distance at this time. They were the experts of various races who had just broken through the blockade of the celestial race. They were almost scared to death when they saw the scene in the distance. Those who were fighting in the void were, without exception, peerless monstrous geniuses whose names had shaken the world. Perhaps they were old antiques who had lived for countless years. However, they had fallen one by one. In fact, several of them had fallen together and exploded. They had died extremely miserable deaths. It was unimaginable. They felt as if they were dreaming. The death of one of these geniuses would cause countless people to discuss it. So, they had fallen like dumplings. My God, this is the twilight of the gods. It's the real twilight of the gods. Someone exclaimed. He had been scared out of his wits. Even a real deity would be scared to death when they saw this scene. What was even more terrifying was that this kind of killing was not in the past. Yi Shiwen's killing was still going on. They were fortunate enough to see the most terrifying scene. Yi Shiwen was wielding the stone sword, wantonly killing those old antiques and monstrous geniuses. However, these old antiques and monstrous geniuses were advancing wave after wave like crazy. Although some of them were scared out of their wits, or had completely comprehended and escaped, most of them still had a crazy appearance. This what the hell is going on? They felt as if they had missed the most important thing. Why had Yi Shiwen become the public enemy? Compared to those high and mighty monstrous geniuses and old antiques, these people felt the competition and pressure from Yi Shiwen more. Therefore, they paid more attention to him. They recognized Yi Shiwen almost immediately. However, what they saw was a scene that scared them to death. Heavens, if this scene spreads out, Yi Shiwen will become the public enemy of the world. Many people murmured. This was getting crazier and crazier. Compared to the current situation, the disturbance caused by Yi Shiwen killing Wu Ziyu and the others was simply child's play. Those monstrous geniuses had the possibility of growing up, but they had not yet grown up. But now, these monstrous geniuses were real monstrous geniuses. What is that? Is it the Emperor Opportunity? At this time, some people discovered that the experts of the celestial race were constantly guiding the Emperor Opportunity to descend. All of a sudden, there was a commotion and excitement. They seemed to understand why Yi Shiwen was in conflict with so many monstrous geniuses. Looking at the direction in which Yi Shiwen was breaking through, they knew that he was aiming for the Emperor Opportunity. However, what made them feel strange was why the experts of the major forces would join hands to deal with Yi Shiwen. What the hell did he do? Moreover, they would rather intercept Yi Shiwen even at the expense of the opportunity to become an emperor? Compared to Yi Shiwen's craziness, Jiren Wang on the other side was not so shocking. He could only protect himself under the siege of the celestial race experts. He was far less crazy than Yi Shiwen. Chapter 2653. No matter how they looked at it, the entire scene was extremely strange. Why was it always a group of people trying to kill a single person? What exactly did the two of them do that forced the crowd to eliminate them first? Could it be because they were too powerful and had the highest chance of obtaining the opportunity to become a martial emperor? It didn't seem like it. After all, the opportunity to become an emperor was about to fall into the hands of the celestial race's experts. Why were the others so indifferent? Rumble! Terrifying collisions broke out. These attacks fell on the 10,000 method roulette above Yi Shiwen's head. Each attack set off a shocking ripple. The 10,000 method roulette's reputation wasn't just for show. It blocked all of the attacks and even launched a counterattack. However, Yi Shiwen's consumption was also increasing. Originally, it wasn't too strenuous for him to control the 10,000 method roulette, but he had to deal with so many monstrous geniuses and old antiques. Blocking any one of them would consume a lot of magic power. Even if he was tyrannical, he wouldn't be able to handle so many of them. Pucci, a powerful one-armed knight, was pierced by Yi Shiwen's sword. He couldn't be stopped at all. He had left behind a glorious legend in many worlds, but now he couldn't be more dead. However, Yi Shiwen didn't even glance at him. It was as if he was looking at a dead ant. His ruthless gaze coldly swept through the people who had been blinded by the opportunity to become an emperor. Since they didn't want to retreat, then he would kill them. He would kill his way out and kill until the world was terrified. At this time, they were already a little scared. Yi Shiwen would seriously injure or kill an expert every time he attacked. In a short period of time, dozens of incomparably powerful monstrous geniuses and old antiques had fallen. The number of people who were seriously injured was no less than this number. All of a sudden, a large number of people had died, but it was still huge. Yi Shiwen was still under heavy threat. If they were just stalling for time, then their goal would be achieved. Suddenly, a dragon's roar reverberated from the ninth heaven. A giant dragon flashed in the void and transformed into an astonishing sword light. It pierced through the sky and slashed down towards Yi Shiwen with a dreadful willpower. It turned out to be a sword light. It wasn't an ordinary dragon. To be precise, it should be a golden dragon that had been slaughtered and then refined into a sword. The colossal golden dragons were royalty among the dragons. With the strength of the dragon clan, who would dare to do such a thing? That person would simply become the enemy of the entire dragon clan. However, this treasured sword was refined in such a way. The strength of its master could be seen from this. Yi Shiwen looked over and saw that it was the silver-haired young man who had made a move. Although he was in the formation, he was obviously paying attention to the situation in other places. Yi Shiwen was obviously here for the opportunity to become a Kurfürst. How could he leave it at that? He actually took advantage of the chaos to attack. Within the sword radiance, there was a terrifying aura surging out. It was like a vast ocean that was originally restrained in a bottle. Now, it was completely released. The terrifying sword radiance exuded the aura of the great path as it fell down like a waterfall. It was really a peerless sword. The person who used it was also a peerless master who was completely above the so-called 12 divine generals. Although he hadn't reached the level of the king-ranked realm, Yi Shiwen felt a real threat from him. It was simply unimaginable that he could actually cultivate to this level. Even Yi Shiwen had to look at him in a different light. No wonder the Heaven Clan would actually choose such a person to inherit the opportunity to become a Kurfürst. In terms of aptitude, he seemed to have such qualifications. However, what was even more unforgettable was that in the face of the sudden attack of the peerless sword, Yi Shiwen actually only used his fists to blast out the infinite six paths roulette, suppressing the surroundings. Rumble! In an instant, all kinds of abnormally active Great Path laws in the sky collapsed and turned into powder under the impact of this terrifying force. The strength of Yi Shiwen's body had also shocked everyone. It seemed that the strength of Yi Shiwen's sword in the stone had made many people forget that his body was equally tyrannical. In fact, it was even more tyrannical. In the end, Yi Shiwen was stronger. Perhaps it was because the silver-haired young man used most of his energy to guide the opportunity to become a Kurfürst. The sword radiance that he slashed out was directly smashed by Yi Shiwen's fist. Even his golden dragon sword was directly sent flying. When the Heaven Clan experts saw this scene, it was as if they had seen a ghost. That lord's attack was actually broken so easily. Although that lord had not truly entered the king-ranked realm, his status in the Heaven Clan was comparable to that of ordinary king-ranked realm experts. He was known as the person who had the potential to become a Kurfürst. The Heaven Clan had also spared no effort in nurturing him. Among his peers, he was really invincible. Even king-ranked realm experts had fought against him before. Yet, he was actually sent flying with one punch. This human was too terrifying. It was hard to imagine how terrifying he would be if he was allowed to grow. You guys are still trying to stop me. Can't you guys see that your opportunity to become a Kurfürst is about to be taken away by that Heaven Clan expert? When he takes it away, even if you guys stop me, you won't have a chance. Yi Shiwen shouted. At this time, the opportunity to become a Kurfürst had already landed on the silver-haired young man's head. It was only 3 feet away. He was almost successful. Between heaven and earth, all kinds of laws appeared. They manifested around that ball of green light. Almost with the naked eye, the laws of the Great Path were visible. It felt like someone was explaining the various principles of the Great Path to you. At this time, everyone finally understood why this Kurfürst was called the Kurfürst. It contained many insights that one needed to become a Kurfürst. It could help one get through the most difficult step and obtain the Tao. After confirming the ancient legend, everyone became even more excited. One by one, they came to their senses. At this time, no one dared to stop Yi Shiwen. First, they would die if they tried to stop him. Second, they couldn't let this silver-haired young man from the Heaven Clan obtain the opportunity to become a Kurfürst. Otherwise, who were they working so hard for? Yi Shiwen frowned slightly and breathed a sigh of relief. In the series of collisions just now, although he looked incomparably powerful, in reality, his spiritual power had been consumed by 80 to 90%. With just his physical body alone, he was at most comparable to ordinary geniuses. How could he suppress so many geniuses? After all, he was not at the peak of the sage realm. His spiritual power had not climbed to the peak. Otherwise, there would not have been such a problem. At this time, the latecomers also rushed over like crazy. Although their chances of success were not high, if they were lucky enough to encounter it, it would not be a problem for them to soar to the sky in the future. Just based on the traces of the Great Path that were displayed, even if they could not obtain the Tao, becoming a king was a sure thing. Even if they could not become a Kurfürst, they would be able to stand out and become someone above others. Rumble! In the distance, there was a frenzied battle. The masters of the Heaven Clan who were originally surrounding Ji Rinwang rushed in the direction of the Great Matrix, wanting to stop all the masters of the various clans. Ordinary masters were no pressure for the elites of the various clans. Although the leader, the six-eared macaque, had been seriously injured by Yi Shiwen and seemed to be unable to withstand a single blow, it was not like that. It was not that he was not strong enough. It was just that Yi Shiwen was too terrifying. He could kill gods and Buddhas. These elite masters of the Heaven Clan were no match for him at all. Only the masters of the 12 heavenly generals could stop these crazy geniuses and old antiques. For the opportunity to become a Kurfürst, these people even dared to attack Yi Shiwen, let alone a few masters of the Heaven Clan. The attacks of these experts were like a long dragon that rampaged straight into the Great Formation. Only then did they barely manage to be blocked by the many experts of the Tian clan who had rushed over a step earlier. At this moment, the opportunity to become an emperor had already touched the forehead of that silver-haired young man. The silver-haired young man spread his arms as though he was hugging something. A jade-green light erupted, but his face revealed an expression of agony. A crack actually appeared on his forehead. His skin, which even divine weapons wouldn't be able to cut open, was actually torn apart by the jade-green light. His entire skull was split open, and his brain was slowly being stuffed inside. The whole scene looked incomparably bloody and disgusting. There was no such thing as the legendary celebration of obtaining the opportunity to become a Kurfürst, where the golden lotuses of the heavens and the immortal springs of the earth burst forth. It was as if it was seizing the body of the Heaven Clan. It was incomparably strange. Despite how strong the silver-haired young man was, he couldn't take it any longer. Clenching his hands into fists, he crushed the air around him, causing terrifying magical power to erupt out. Even the freakishly talented old-timers were unable to advance an inch. At this time, those monstrous geniuses and old fogies were extremely anxious. They were somewhat regretful. Why did they have to challenge Yishiwen? Even if he destroyed the opportunity to become a Kurfürst, it was still better than letting these masters of the Heaven Clan obtain it. The Heaven Clan was the public enemy of almost all the races in the myriad heavens. If they wanted to return, they would naturally not be welcomed. They were almost the public enemy. What they had done before was equivalent to helping the public enemy. They felt that they had been fooled. They had been used as a spear for no reason. They were ashamed and angry at the same time. They crazily attacked. All kinds of unique martial arts were bombarded. The enchantment on the silver-haired young man's body immediately shook. However, it wouldn't be broken so quickly for a while. The opportunity to become a Kurfürst continued to fall and fuse with the silver-haired young man. Oh God, do we really want to let the remnants of the Heaven Clan return? This thought emerged in everyone's mind. They hoped that someone would turn the tide at this critical moment. However, a loud shout was heard at this time. A blood-red sword light pierced through the vast sky. It grew to tens of thousands of feet in length. It instantly broke the enchantment of the silver-haired young man and pierced through his head. Bang! Chapter 2654. Everyone was stunned. In such a huge battlefield, apart from the whistling of the wind, there was no sound at all. Everyone was scared stiff. Just when everyone thought that they could not stop the silver-haired young man from devouring the Emperor's opportunity, Yi Shiwen's move shocked the entire battlefield. Had it really been completely destroyed? Roar! A deafening roar could be heard from the silver-haired young man. His head grew out again, looking extremely bizarre. However, what everyone was concerned about wasn't this. They were more concerned about whether the opportunity to become a monarch had truly been destroyed. At this time, the geniuses and the old antiques adjusted their mood quickly, almost immediately changing their minds. Since they could not obtain it, then they would destroy it. It would be better for anyone to obtain it than the Celestials. If the Celestials obtained it, it would mean that all the realms would be enslaved. Whoosh! The silver-haired young man did not intend to answer at all. He directly turned into a stream of light and flew into the distance. Kill, we can't let him escape. If we let him obtain the way in the future, will there still be a way for our races and sects to survive? At this time, while everyone was still in a daze, Ji Renwang roared and slashed out with his sword, killing a powerful 12 celestial generals of the celestial race. At this time, everyone reacted as if they were enlightened. Although they belonged to different races and did not have a common cause, only when facing the celestial race could they unite against a common enemy. If other races had emperors, it would only make that race stronger for a long time. Since ancient times, this was the law. But if the celestial race gained power, it was possible that the seal would be opened and the celestial race that had been exiled to a distant space would be welcomed back. That would be a disaster. Kill! We can't let that guy escape. Fight! These geniuses and the old antiques all roared and attacked. For a moment, the experts of the celestial race were in a mess. The geniuses and the old antiques, who could be said to be allies, suddenly turned against each other. And after thinking of the terrible consequences of the celestial race gaining power, they all went crazy. They must not give them a chance. Boom! 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 Under the attacks of these crazy geniuses and old antiques, the experts of the celestial race fought and retreated. Powerful experts at the peak of the Sage Realm died one after another. Yi Shiwen and Ji Renwang were leading the charge. The two of them were like a human-shaped road roller, killing all the heavenly race experts in their way. They were simply unable to withstand a single blow from these two people. But how could the celestial race not know what was happening? This was related to the possibility of their race returning to the heavens in the future. How could they give up so easily? Thus, they risked their lives to snipe them. Even Ji Renwang was blocked. Apart from Yi Shihua, who used the 10,000 spell roulette to protect himself, and the Avicii sword to open a path, the others were blocked by the Celestials. Even if they had to pay a huge price, they had to stop these people. Yi Shiwen, I'll leave him to you. Don't let him escape. Ji Renwang shouted. Yi Shiwen did not look back and directly chased after him. The demon wings on his back spread open, and his whole body turned into a stream of light, chasing like lightning. Both sides had reached their maximum speed. Yi Shiwen could only faintly see his opponent's back. This silver-haired youth's technique was brilliant, definitely not inferior to the demon wings. But Yi Shiwen was not surprised. Although the demon wings was a martial art of the Demon King level, there were many Emperor-level experts in the celestial race. Even his ruler's swordsmanship was learned from the celestial race. Although Yi Shiwen was getting closer little by little, if he continued to chase like this, he would only be able to catch up if he chased out of the Kerfus Road. He had been stopped just now, and it had really wasted too much time. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen felt a burst of violent fluctuations in the void. Then, a terrifying power poured in from the outside and soared into the sky. The void was actually torn apart by a force, turning into an incomparably huge door. A portal? Yi Shiwen's pupils slightly shrank. The celestial race was obviously more prepared than he had imagined. To be able to project power from the outside and form this portal, who knew how much resources they had used to achieve this. Seeing that the silver-haired youth was about to escape into the portal, Yi Shiwen took a deep breath, and the Avicii sword in his hand sensed Yi Shiwen's intention. It rose sharply against the wind, and instantly grew into a huge sword that was millions of miles long. And on the other side of the huge sword, Yi Shiwen was as small as an ant. This is the last attack, die. Yi Shiwen roared, his face flushed red. His whole body's martial power was instantly sucked out and poured into the Avicii sword. Rumble! The huge sword slowly fell down, like a huge curtain of the sky crushing down. The silver-haired youth was simply frightened when he saw this, and quickly sped up to escape inside. Poochie! The sword light pierced right through his body, and a small part of his body was cut off. Ah! Yi Shiwen. The silver-haired youth was in so much pain that he was going crazy. His perfect body had never been injured before, and now it was injured twice by the same person. He was going crazy. However, in the nick of time, he still dodged slightly and avoided the most fatal point. He did not explode from head to toe. At this time, he could not care about finding the other half of his body. He directly fell into the portal. Boom! The entire portal was completely destroyed by this sword. If he had been a little bit slower, he would not have been able to escape. Huff, huff! Yi Shiwen kept panting, but his face was extremely ugly. I actually let him escape. At this time, Ji Renwang and the others had finally caught up. Just now, they had all seen this scene from afar. Yi Shiwen's sword had made them tremble in fear. It was almost comparable to a king-ranked martial artist's power, but in the end, the silver-haired youth still managed to escape. Everyone's face was gloomy. Everyone could imagine how big of an uproar it would cause if this matter was spread out. The opportunity to become a martial emperor was actually obtained by the heavenly race. The consequences were simply unimaginable. Yi Shiwen, why didn't you stop him? Someone looked at Yi Shiwen agitatedly, as if Yi Shiwen deliberately let the silver-haired youth of the heavenly race go. Yi Shiwen glanced at him coldly and was too lazy to say anything at all. If not for these people wholeheartedly trying to stop him, things would not have turned out like this. He just kept circulating the Phoenix regeneration technique to recover his spirit power. That sword just now could be said to be the strongest in his life. The spirit power consumed was not much, but the life force that was burned could not be recovered in such a short period of time. In order to stop the silver-haired youth from escaping, he had already tried his best. However, he was still one step too late. He only injured the silver-haired youth, but was unable to kill him. Yi Shiwen, are you colluding with the heavenly race? I heard that you have the 10,000 method roulette, but the heavenly race actually didn't take it back? Many people looked at Yi Shiwen excitedly, as if they wanted him to come out and take responsibility for this. However, there were also some people like Six-Eared Macaque, Golden-Winged Rock, and the others. After all, they were still outstanding people and could not do such a shameless thing. They also saw that sword just now. It was almost as if Yi Shiwen had done his best. If it was them, they would not have been able to do better. Was this really the will of the heavens? If it wasn't for your stupidity being blinded by greed, how could this happen? You still have the face to ask me now. Yi Shiwen had almost recovered and said with a sneer. Facing these people's accusations, he said without giving them any face. As for whether I have the 10,000 method roulette or not, it's none of your business. If you have the ability, come and fight me again. Before Yi Shiwen's voice fell, his aura was like a landslide, sweeping out like a tsunami, rolling up thousands of layers of space waves. Many people had thought that they shouldn't have. They wanted to take advantage of the time when Yi Shiwen had exhausted his martial power to harm him. But now that they saw that Yi Shiwen had recovered so much in such a short time, they didn't dare to say anything. The matter of Yi Shiwen killing the monstrous genius and the old antique was still fresh in their minds. They would not forget it so quickly. Under Yi Shiwen's cold gaze, these people dispersed one after another. At this time, the opportunity to become an emperor had already been taken away. How could they have the mood to continue staying? They all flew out of the Kurfürst Road to inform their own people of this important news. In the end, he still escaped. The only one who stayed, Ji Renwang, had a somewhat unwilling look on his face. Only he knew how long they had prepared for this moment. They even prepared their trump cards, but in the end, they still could not destroy the opportunity to become an emperor. Is it really the will of the heavens? You also did your best. Yi Shiwen could not help but sigh. It could be said that he and Ji Renwang had already done their best, but he still managed to escape. He also had nothing to say. But fortunately, you injured him twice. I can be sure that the opportunity to become an emperor is no longer complete. If he wants to thoroughly comprehend it, I'm afraid it will take many years. We still have time, Ji Renwang said with a slightly gratified tone. Fortunately, the opportunity to become an emperor was not complete. Otherwise, it would not be long before the emperor of the celestial race would be born. At that time, it would be a disaster. There's still time to completely exterminate the remnants of the Tian clan. These past few years, the various great powers have been on guard against each other, which is why these remnants have had the environment to grow. Now, I'm afraid they don't have any thoughts of guarding against us. But this time, I've dragged you into this mess. Your troubles have just begun, but I won't just stand by and watch. After all, you're doing this to help me. Chapter 2655. A huge uproar. The news that came out of the Kurfürst Road caused a huge uproar in the myriad heavens. Like a stormy sea, it spread everywhere at the fastest speed possible. The opportunity to become an emperor had actually appeared when the Kurfürst Road opened this time, compared to the opportunity to become an emperor being obtained by others. What was even more shocking was that the Tian clan had indeed participated in the competition for the opportunity to become an emperor, and they had actually succeeded. A stone that caused 1,000 ripples. The fear that many people had towards the Tian clan deep in their hearts also exploded in an instant. When they thought of the terrifying race that could fight against the myriad heavens with the power of a single race, no one could accept it calmly. In the end, they all knew that the silver-haired young man had directly teleported away. If he had directly rushed out of the Kurfürst Road, then he definitely would not have been able to leave. One had to know that there were always some kings who could not enter the vicinity. Although they could not enter, it did not prevent them from waiting here to intercept him. Since ancient times, it was not that there had not been any successful cases. No matter how strong those monstrous geniuses were, when faced with the surprise attack of these kings, they would still be killed in an instant. The Tian clan had obviously thought of this, and simply let him teleport away in the Kurfürst Road. For this reason, who knew how many resources and foundations had been used? When this news spread, for a moment, the myriad heavens were shaken, and all the major forces immediately took action. In the face of the possibility of the return of the Tian clan, no one dared to underestimate it. Even in the past, when the myriad heavens were at their peak, when there were many experts of the imperial monarch level in their positions, they still fought until the heavens collapsed and the earth cracked. It was incomparably difficult, not to mention the current situation where there was not a single imperial monarch. If the Tian clan were to return, it would simply be a disaster. At this time, the martial sect, who had long been prepared, stood up and called for the major forces to once again form an allied army. With the inheritances of those existences that had produced imperial monarch-level existences as the core, with the king sect as the backbone, and with the many other immortal inheritances, they formed an allied army to annihilate the remnants of the Tian clan. This was no longer the time to be scheming against each other. Before the Tian clan absorbed the opportunity to become a martial emperor, they had to exterminate them all. Since they couldn't obtain the opportunity to become a martial emperor, they would destroy the silver-haired youth's body. Perhaps it was because the martial sect itself had a strong rallying power, or perhaps it was because of the fear that the 10,000 realms had towards the Tian clan, but the call of the allied forces quickly received a response, especially the ancient Phoenix realm. Previously, they had been heavily injured by the remnants of the Tian clan, and even the patriarch, the Phoenix King, was forced to die in battle. Besides the ancient Phoenix world, almost every race in the universe had a blood feud with the celestial race. Every race had elders who had died tragically at the hands of the celestial race. Perhaps the younger generation didn't feel this deeply, but those old fogies in power had never forgotten this for even a moment. In addition to the previous two battles against the heavens, the allied forces quickly entered the stage of discussion. Many of the old fogies of the major forces who had hidden for many years came out one after another and went to the martial sect of the Heaven Realm to discuss how to annihilate the remnants of the Tian clan, so as to avoid causing greater turmoil. It could be said to be the matter that attracted the most attention at the moment. In addition to this matter, there was another matter that also affected the hearts of countless people, and that was the matter of Yi Shiwen beheading dozens of evildoers and old fogies. Together with the matter of the opportunity to become a martial emperor, it also spread throughout the universe. When the news first came out, many people didn't believe it because it sounded as ridiculous as it could be. It wasn't strange for Yi Shiwen to behead any peerless evildoer. It wasn't unprecedented in the past. When Ji Renwang entered the Curfirst Road for the first time, he had once defeated an evildoer. However, Yi Shiwen didn't just kill one, but dozens of evildoers and old fogies. Everyone was going crazy because they knew too well what these people represented. Although the King Realm was the highest combat power at present, these people usually only cultivated in seclusion. They didn't care about anything at all. Basically, it was these old fogies or evildoers who were in charge. It was like the Hidden Valley's Lord of Flames had fallen one day. It would definitely be a huge shock to the Hidden Valley. It might not be a big deal if only one of them had fallen. The Curfirst Road was extremely dangerous. Even the evildoers couldn't completely guarantee that they could protect themselves. However, dozens of such existences had fallen in one go. Moreover, they had all died in Yi Shiwen's hands. How could this news not cause an uproar? That was especially true of the deathless legacies that had lost their elite disciples and pillars. They were on the verge of going crazy. The king-ordained sects were better off, as they had only lost a single successor. But to the ordinary deathless legacies, their old-timers were like the founding patriarchs of their sects, their pillars of support, their spiritual support. Now that they had all fallen, it was like a catastrophe for the deathless legacies. Many enemies also took advantage of this opportunity to come knocking on their doors. It was the first time that Yi Shiwen had truly caught everyone's attention. However, this time, he was no longer an extremely outstanding existence among the younger generation. Instead, he was known by everyone as a giant who could influence the heavens and realms. Yi Shiwen's strength was unimaginable. At the same time, many people were even more afraid of his ruthlessness. Even a king-rank martial artist would not dare to kill so many powerful martial artists and old antiques at the same time, much less severely injure a similar number of powerful martial artists and old antiques. The anger of these hundreds of forces was enough to completely drown a king realm master. However, Yi Shiwen had dared to do so. Being powerful was not the most terrifying thing. After all, there were king realm masters who were even more powerful than him. However, what really made them not dare to look directly at him was his audacity. He was simply lawless. Although some people thought that the situation at that time was so tense that they had no choice but to act, it was also to prevent the opportunity to become a martial emperor from falling into the hands of the heaven race. If it were anyone else, they would not have been able to do so. However, for the forces that had lost their evildoers and old fogies, how could they accept such an explanation? No matter how righteous they were, there was no way they could accept such a thing. Most of them thought that these people had been blinded by the opportunity to become a martial emperor and that their deaths were not to be regretted. In the end, the opportunity to become a martial emperor had fallen into the hands of the heaven race. Even if they were to come back to life, they would not be able to escape death. However, these forces still did not let it go. They even went to the Hidden Valley. Although the Hidden Valley was powerful and had a few king-rank martial artists, they were still in a terrible fix. Not only did they find many ordinary immortal inheritances, but they also found the demonic eagle race, which was considered a royal race among the demonic beasts in the demonic domain. While everyone in the Hidden Valley was shocked by Yi Shiwen's terrifying combat power, they could not help but smile bitterly. This Yi Shiwen was too good at causing trouble. He had killed dozens of evildoers and old fogies in one go. Not to mention hearing about such a thing, they did not even dare to think that such a thing could happen. However, this young master had actually done it. Compared to this earth-shattering event, killing Jun Ding Tian was nothing. How could Jun Ding Tian be compared to those evildoers who had been famous for many years? Thinking about it, it was obvious that it was impossible. This was a shocking and ruthless person. Many people realized that the Hidden Valley was probably going to have an amazing king. Compared to him, the Lord of Flames, who had been the most amazing in the past, seemed to have lost his brilliance. Not only the Lord of Flames, but almost everyone's brilliance had been overshadowed by him. Even Ji Renwang, who had once amazed an entire generation, seemed to have lost his brilliance. At the very least, with his strength, it was impossible for him to kill evildoers of the same level. Even when surrounded by so many people, he still managed to kill dozens of them and severely injure dozens of them. More than half of them were defeated by him. Some people predicted that once he truly became a king, it would be the beginning of an even greater era. If there was someone in this generation who had the opportunity to achieve Dao, there was no doubt that he would be one of the most important candidates. Without Jun Ding Tian, it was even more impossible for the Hidden Valley to give up on Yi Shiwen. Not to mention, Yi Shiwen had shown amazing potential. Even in the face of the questioning and pressure from nearly 10 sects and a group of immortal inheritances, the Hidden Valley did not relent and face them head-on. Fortunately, they still had one last trump card, which was that reason was on their side. These people insisted on stopping Yi Shiwen, and in the end, they died tragically. They even caused the celestial race to obtain the opportunity to become emperor. Their deaths were not to be regretted at all, seeing that a war was about to break out between both sides, and it was very likely that it would break out into a divine war that would last for tens of thousands of years. The support that Ji Renwang had promised to give to Yi Shiwen finally arrived. At this moment, the martial sect stood up and supported Yi Shiwen. After all, Ji Renwang was the protagonist of another matter. It was him who wanted to destroy the opportunity to become emperor, and in the end, it led to a huge conflict. Experts from all sides suffered heavy casualties. It could be said that he was the fuse of this incident. It was just that the martial sect was extremely powerful, and no one dared to find trouble with the martial sect. However, the Hidden Valley seemed to be a soft persimmon that was easier to bully. This was also one of the reasons why the Hidden Valley held back their anger and refused to give in. They were simply too much of a bully. Moreover, the Hidden Valley was a veteran sect, so it was impossible for them to give in when they were clearly in the right. If it was only the Hidden Valley, it would not be enough to make the various forces give in. However, with the addition of the martial sect, it was completely different. This terrifying inheritance that had once produced an emperor was still one of the most powerful behemoths in the world. They could ignore the Hidden Valley, but they could not ignore the martial sect. Moreover, the martial sect now held the greater cause. When the remnants of the celestial race were about to rise again, doing so would be equivalent to internal strife, and they would be attacked by all the major forces. Under such circumstances, the Demon Eagle race and the other behemoths finally gave up on forcing the Hidden Valley unwillingly. At this time, Yi Shiwen, who had caused such an uproar, was in seclusion in the depths of the Blood Prison. He was making the final breakthrough to the late stage of the Sage Realm. Chapter 2656. In the depths of the Blood Prison, above a pool of blood, Yi Shiwen's figure floated up and down. This was the most essential place in the depths of the Blood Prison. The blood chi there was dense, and it could instantly replenish a large amount of energy. Generally speaking, only a few king-ranked great ancestors in the Hidden Valley, the Lord of Flames, and a few other extremely important figures could cultivate in a place like this. Ordinary sage plane cultivators were not qualified at all. The blood chi condensed into blood dragons and surged into Yi Shiwen's body, replenishing the energy he had used to break through. It was almost endless. Cultivating in seclusion here was many times more efficient than cultivating outside, and it could save a lot of time. Yi Shiwen had already used a king-ranked elixir to break through once. Although he had failed in the end, it had given him a better understanding of the king-ranked realm and allowed him to control more power. He had even surpassed the limits of power that geniuses could have. Otherwise, he would not have been able to kill so many geniuses and old antiques on his own. In this battle, he completely let go and did not hold back at all. While he was carefree, it also allowed him to completely control this power. Now he was going to completely transform this power and comprehension, completely breaking through to the late stage of the Sage Plane in one go, and his battle prowess breaking into the king-ranked realm. Around him, many laws manifested. They were all laws and great paths that he had comprehended, and it was as if a world was being rebuilt around him. At the same time, he was even more conflicted because he knew very well that the world of chaos that Yi Wudi had mentioned before was really coming. In this world of chaos, even king-rank plane cultivators might not be able to protect themselves, let alone sage plane cultivators. He had to break through to king-rank plane in the shortest time possible so that he could protect himself. All the laws manifested, and all the great paths gathered. Yi Shiwen was in such an environment, comprehending in a frenzy. In his body, the mysterious space continued to revolve, transforming more information about the great paths for him to comprehend. Countless blood dragons surged into his body like rivers, replenishing the mysterious space's energy consumption. The speed was getting faster and faster, and he was also deeply immersed in this comprehension, almost as if he was about to lose himself. This was an extreme method of comprehending the Tao. He was practically immersed in the great Tao and was swimming within it. This method of comprehending the Tao was extremely dangerous. If he wasn't careful, he might completely transform into the Tao. He would become one with the great Tao and lose himself. His physical body would transform into a rainbow. However, the enlightening mind ancient tree in his body was constantly blooming with dazzling rays of light, stabilizing his mind so that he wouldn't lose himself in the great Tao. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to enter this extreme state of enlightenment. But the effect of doing so was also very obvious, and that was that his cultivation was growing rapidly. The magical power in his body was circulating in circles, attacking again and again, breaking through the barrier of the late stage of the Sage Plane. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Time passed day by day, and he was getting closer and closer to this limit. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen, who had been motionless for decades, finally let out a long and loud shout. His body moved. At the same time, a group of rays of light transformed into all kinds of strange phenomena in the sky. A wave of medicinal fragrance spread out. Yi Shiwen opened his mouth, and the group of rays of light couldn't escape. He swallowed it whole. The light dissipated, and it turned out to be an elixir. It seemed to have developed its own consciousness, and it wanted to escape. This kind of elixir was already considered a spiritual item of the world. If it could escape, it might even be able to cultivate a great magic in the future. By then, it would be even more tyrannical than ordinary top masters. Unfortunately, how could Yi Shiwen let it escape? He immediately bit it and turned it into a torrent of energy, pouring into his body. Suddenly, the originally very stubborn barrier weakened a lot. Yi Shiwen calmed his mind and continued to attack the powerful barrier of the late stage of the Sage Plane. And at this moment, flowers of blood began to fall from the sky, blooming in the sky one by one. Those who didn't know would have thought that this was originally a phenomenon in the blood prison. Almost in an instant, Yi Shiwen, who was in the midst of a breakthrough, was startled. Something's wrong. Yi Shiwen was startled because he immediately felt that something was wrong. This wasn't an inherent scene in the blood prison. On the contrary, these blooming blood flowers triggered his memories. He thought of something and couldn't help but change his complexion. But at this time, he had reached the most critical moment, and he couldn't move at all. He could only watch as the flowers of blood fell. Suddenly, these flowers of blood bloomed, and daggers appeared on them. They were full of murderous intent, and the terrifying murderous intent exploded in an instant. It was as if he had entered a battlefield of mountains of corpses and seas of blood. These flowers of blood fell from the sky, and they were getting faster and faster. The speed was so fast that it turned into a cold light and directly approached Yi Shiwen. Swish! Above Yi Shiwen's head, a blood light flew out. It was the Tianyuan mirror that had sensed something at the critical moment and directly made a move. The blood light turned into a torrent, sweeping everything, and collided with the flowers of blood in the sky. A huge roar made the whole world shake violently. Who dares to be presumptuous in my hidden valley? Yi Shiwen forced out a wisp of his spirit and shouted. At the same time, his divine senses were released frantically and covered the entire blood pool. However, he couldn't find any trace of the enemy. He didn't feel happy that he couldn't find the enemy. On the contrary, he suddenly became nervous. With his current martial power, it could be said that although he hadn't broken through yet, he was already infinitely close to the king realm. However, he couldn't even sense the enemy. Assassin. There was an assassin. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary assassin, but the king of assassins. An ordinary god of death would be courting death if they dared to approach him. With his current martial power, he could kill a god of death with just a glance. Only the legendary king of assassins could approach him so silently, and even his divine senses couldn't sense it. There were 3,000 great Daos, and each of them could be proven. Among them, the Killing Dao was undoubtedly one of the most famous great Daos. Many gods of death were world-shaking, but it was undoubtedly rare to cultivate to the level of the king of assassins. Besides the hidden devil clan in the devil domain, there were only a few forces that had the king of assassins in charge. Blood flowers falling from the sky. This was the symbol of the Blood Kill Gang. The Blood Kill Gang was an extremely terrifying name in the myriad domains. Countless experts had died in the hands of the Blood Kill Gang. Since ancient times, there had been many powerful demons who had died in the hands of the Blood Kill Gang. There was even a period of time when it caused public outrage. Many factions joined forces to encircle and annihilate the Blood Kill Gang. However, in the end, they did not succeed. Although the Blood Kill Gang had suffered great losses in that battle, the various factions had also lost several king-ranked experts. At one point, they had charged into the Blood Kill Gang's headquarters, but in the end, they had been defeated by the Killing Array. Since then, very few people had mentioned the matter of encircling and annihilating the Blood Kill Gang. The gains did not make up for the losses. Moreover, the illustrious reputation of the Blood Kill Gang was also established. From then on, it could be compared to the Hidden Devil Clan and become one of the 4 major assassin organizations. There were countless experts in the assassin organization. It was said that not only was there a king of assassins in charge, But there was also more than one king realm expert. It was not inferior to the ordinary king realm experts. One could imagine how big the reputation of the Bloodkill gang was. Under normal circumstances, the Hidden Valley was not willing to offend such a colossus. It wasn't that they couldn't deal with it, but the losses did not make up for the gains. Let's not talk about how many losses they would suffer. Even if some of them managed to escape, they would be attacked again today and again tomorrow. Who could stand it? However, now that the people of the Bloodkill gang had come to bully them, it was a different matter. In just a moment, he immediately thought of many things. He had deduced the identity of the person who had come. At the same time, he was also incomparably shocked in his heart. This was because he had never expected that there would be a king of assassins coming to kill him. There was no need to say more about how powerful the king of assassins was. He could kill powerful king realm experts. If one was targeted by the king of assassins, almost no one could calm down. However, the price of the king of assassins was also very high. It was not something that an ordinary person could afford. Although he seemed to be famous in the world, as long as one was not a king realm expert, it would rarely alarm the king of assassins to make a move. This was because there was no need. It was no different from making a mountain out of a molehill. It was like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. However, he was not surprised now. With the things he had done recently, it was unknown how many people were secretly looking forward to his death. Although it seemed that they had been forced to retreat by the martial sect, they were actually operating in the dark. Yi Shiwen did not expect those people to give up. It was precisely because of this that he had to increase his cultivation. At that time, no matter what tricks the other party had, he would be able to protect himself. I didn't expect it to be a senior of the Bloodkill gang. I wonder which senior of the Bloodkill gang is facing me? Yi Shiwen casually used his divine thoughts to send out his voice. On the other hand, he was frantically searching with his divine thoughts. He wanted to find this figure. This kind of battle, where he could not even find the opponent, was really too depressing. This was also the reason why many people were not willing to offend the god of assassins. It was because these people's fighting methods were too strange. They would not fight head-on at all. At the same time, he did not stop cultivating. He was stalling for time. As long as he broke through, he would not be afraid of anyone. Jia, interesting. You, a junior, are quite scheming. Unfortunately, you will die today. Someone has paid a high price to take your life. I don't want to go against the Hidden Valley, but this reward is too tempting. A phantom appeared in front of Yi Shiwen and sneered. Jia, this is interesting. However, his voice hadn't yet faded when a cold light suddenly appeared behind him. The virtual shadow in front of him was actually just a bait. Chapter 2657. Even the deliberate appearance just now was not to show off, but to attract Yi Shiwen's attention. It was simply a bait. The terror of the king of assassins was evident from this. In order to kill the target, it could be said that he would do anything. A cold sword light flashed, and a figure tore through the void. Fast, it was too fast. It was so fast that no one could react. The figure fused with the sword light. Fast, it was too fast, so fast that no one could react. The sword was pointed straight at Yi Shiwen's head. There was no way to avoid it. Everything happened so suddenly and quickly. The speed was too fast. All the rules and defenses collapsed in an instant. Between heaven and earth, only the rules of the way of killing were left. There was no way to avoid it. This was a fatal attack. That was because no one expected that they would be assassinated in the blood prison. This could be said to be the headquarters of the Hidden Valley. No one expected that these assassin kings would be so brazen, so arrogant and despotic. They appeared out of nowhere without the slightest bit of precaution. It was a shocking attack. A king of assassins personally dealing with a sage plain cultivator. There was no reason for him to fail. No one knew how he appeared. He killed with a single blow. It was sharp and ruthless. This was the way of assassins. It was all about killing with a single blow. If this was the case, the spirit would basically be destroyed. There was absolutely no reason for him to survive. Roar! A loud roar rang out. The illusory sky divine python was like a huge dragon roaring as it charged out. The sky shook violently as blood dragons danced in the air. However, although his strength was not bad, with the strength of a sage-playing cultivator, and he was only one step away from becoming a king, it seemed that he was still a bit lacking when facing the sneak attack of a king of assassins. The light of his sword could be said to be blooming with the traces of the Great Path. It was even an incarnation of the Great Path. Bang! With a loud roar, the sword cut the illusory sky python in half. It screamed and fell back into the Tianyuan mirror, escaping back into the illusory sky divine sand. And Yi Shiwen finally took advantage of this little bit of time to display his devil wings and escape this fatal blow. In front of him was an old man who looked to be in his 70s or 80s. He looked as if he could be blown away by a gust of wind. He was bony, and the only thing special about him was that his right hand that was holding the sword was extremely thick and crystal clear. It didn't look like a human hand, but rather a crystal cast. Even with Yi Shiwen's current state of mind, he still felt somewhat apprehensive. Just a moment ago, he had been on the brink of life and death and had come back from the gates of hell. This kind of feeling was enough to send a chill down his spine. So it's Senior Jing Wang who has graced us with his presence. I'm sorry to have offended you, Yi Shiwen said faintly, but his mind was completely open. In the Blood Massacre gang, this Jing Wang was considered as a relatively inexperienced king of assassins. But no matter how inexperienced he was still a genuine king of assassins. It was said that this Jing Wang had lived for more than 10 million years. This was a very shocking number for a king of assassins, because the killing Dao was different from other martial arts. It was completely derived from killing and assassination. These gods of assassins often needed to constantly assassinate powerhouses in order to further their cultivation, especially assassinating powerhouses that were stronger than themselves. Only then would they be able to comprehend the strong killing Dao and thus advance further. But how could those top masters be assassinated so easily? Just like the current Yi Shiwen, any god of assassins who dared to cause trouble for him would be courting death. With just a glance, they could behead him thousands of times. Originally, this seemed like a joke. If a glance could kill, but with Yi Shiwen's cultivation, this was no longer a joke. Instead, it was a genuine magical power. With just a thought, the world would change and the rules would change accordingly. Using the rules to kill people was just a matter of minutes. This was the power of the gods, the incarnation of the great Tao. Their words were not a joke. Not to mention, Yi Shiwen was now an outstanding figure among the gods. Because of this, although the Tao of assassins was famous, there were very few who could become the king of assassins after living for more than 10 million years. How many assassinations had he experienced in between and still survived? This in itself represented that this Jing Wang was very terrifying. Jia, I didn't expect that you would still recognize me. You were able to dodge my attack at this age. It's really amazing. No wonder they paid such a huge price to kill you. But it's a pity that today, this genius will die in my hands. Jing Wang's figure slowly disappeared into the void. Yi Shiwen clenched his fists. In this situation, although he didn't know how the opposite party had broken in, this battle was inevitable. If it was someone else, they would have been scared to death at this time. A king of assassins wanted to deal with a person. Even if the opponent was an evildoer, it would still be a dead end. However, Yi Shiwen didn't think so. If it was another king-level expert who wanted to confront him head-on, then it could only be said to be a dead end. However, the opposite party was a king of assassins. Although he was terrifying, it was precisely because he was a king of assassins that he had a chance. Yi Shiwen didn't know how many experts of the Tao of assassins he had killed over the years. They all had one thing in common. In addition to the Tao of assassins, they lacked the ability to attack head-on. Compared to the same level king-level experts, their ability to fight head-on was much weaker. Of course, the premise was that they could capture their movements that couldn't be captured at all. If the difference in cultivation was not much, it might be possible. However, in the current situation where his cultivation and strength were completely at a disadvantage, it would be very crazy to imagine all this. However, at this time, he had no other choice. If he didn't fight, he might die here. He had to delay, and wait for the others to support him. After all, this was the core area of the Hidden Valley. Once an invasion happened, they should be able to react very quickly. If the Hidden Valley was so easily broken into, it wouldn't be worthy of being an old king-level sect. He closed his eyes and suddenly opened them. His eyes had been replaced by the eyes of redemption. All the fluctuations in the space were seen in his eyes. His mind had also been stabilized to the extreme. At the same time, the mysterious space in his body was still constantly operating, trying to analyze the Jing King's movements. However, what was even crazier was that the breakthrough to the late stage of the Sage Realm had not stopped. Although breaking through in such an intense environment was simply courting death, he had no other choice. Fortunately, the most crucial part had passed. The remaining part was still dangerous, but it wasn't impossible. Whoosh! A sword light flashed across the sky almost in an instant. No one could clearly see where it had come from. It seemed as if the entire sky was filled with sword lights. However, Yishuan knew that only one of them was real. The way of an assassin was all about killing with a single blow. The others were nothing but baits and shadows. That's all. This was the most terrifying because it was impossible to see clearly what was real and what was fake. Bang! In an instant, the space around Yi Shiwen shattered. Thousands of sword lights pierced into his body. Thousands of sword lights passed through his body and pierced into the fuzzy space. It was at this critical moment that the eyes of redemption played a role. Yi Shiwen seemed to be still in the same place, but in fact he had already moved thousands of spaces away. Blood splashed, and the sky was full of blood. Yi Shiwen didn't seem to have been stabbed, but blood suddenly splashed out from the side of his body. He had moved thousands of spaces away at the critical moment. However, he had still been grazed by that sword light. Yi Shiwen's gilded tyrant form had been sliced apart by that sword light. One could well imagine the dreadfulness of the way of assassination and the dreadfulness of this one-hit killing technique. In the blink of an eye, with a seemingly ordinary sword, the two sides had already exchanged blows. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, Yi Shiwen's sword pierced through the sky. Stone chi froze everything, and it shot backward. At the moment when he was hit by the sword, he finally realized the real source of the sword light. His face was indifferent, as if he wasn't the one who was hit by the sword. His indifference made people feel a little scared. The void in that area was torn and frozen by the stone chi. A figure jumped out. Sure enough, Yi Shiwen's judgment was right. It was indeed so. However, Yi Shiwen's sword had only forced him to reveal his position. Not bad, kid. You actually used a method of injuring yourself to determine my position. But next time, you won't be so lucky. The Crystal King said with a grin, but his face instantly changed. Yi Shiwen's real killing move was yet to come. Whoosh! A blood-red sword light instantly rushed out and directly slashed towards the Crystal King who had been forced to reveal his position. This was the Avicii sword. This was the place where the Avicii sword was born, and it was his home field. With the help of this endless blood energy, Yi Shiwen didn't have to worry about the problem of spiritual power exhaustion, and he could display his full power. Rumble! This was the reason why he had the confidence to fight against the Killer King. Although the 10,000 Law Roulette's power was not small, with his current strength, he couldn't display its full power. It was enough to threaten the king level. After all, it was a top king level magic tool. Only the Avicii sword was different. Its murderous aura was oppressive. Even if Yi Shiwen didn't use it, its power was still astonishing, even above the 10,000 Law Roulette. A blood-red sword light crossed the vast sky, directly piercing through everything, and pierced towards him. Whoosh! The Crystal King moved thousands of feet away, barely dodging the attack of the blood-red sword light. Cold sweat appeared on the Crystal King's face. He was almost pierced by the sword. What was that ominous sword? It could actually threaten a king-level expert. Don't look down on me. Even I don't know how terrifying this sword will be when it is displayed to the extreme, Yi Shiwen said indifferently. Chapter 2658. Yi Shiwen held the Avicii sword in his hand. The spiritual power in his body was recovering rapidly. Streams of blood chi flowed into his body like a dragon. Especially since he had the heart of the blood realm in his body, the speed of blood chi absorption was more than 10 times that of ordinary people. This provided him with almost unlimited energy. In other words, this was his home ground. This was the most fundamental reason why he could fight with the Jing King. Even though the gap between him and the Crystal King was still so large that it couldn't be further increased, but in some aspects, it had been leveled. His body couldn't withstand a single strike from the Crystal King, and similarly, the Crystal King couldn't withstand a single strike from the Sword of Avicii. At this time, when the Jing King looked at Yi Shiwen again, there was no longer the contempt in his eyes. On the contrary, there was a bit of seriousness in his eyes. That ominous sword had made him feel somewhat startled. However, that was all. A king-ranked expert could look up to Yi Shiwen because of the Avicii sword in his hand. Otherwise, how could Yi Shiwen be mentioned in the same breath as him? "Brat, you are really arrogant," the King of Assassins said coldly. "Do you really think I cannot kill you? You should feel honored that I will personally send you on your way." Boom! In an instant, the entire blood prison seemed to shake as if it was about to split open. Many mountains in the distance were rumbling and shaking, and the ground was torn apart. The Jing King was too oppressive. His entire body turned into a murderous hell. He changed the laws and environment of the blood prison into a murderous hell that was suitable for him. This was the true skill of a king-ranked expert. With Yi Shiwen's strength, it was easy to destroy a world. However, it was impossible to create a world. That was the skill of a king-ranked expert. Therefore, for a king-ranked expert, there was no such thing as a suitable battlefield. Even if it was not suitable, it could be turned into a suitable battlefield. This was the scariest part about them. In fact, many dangerous places in the 10,000 domains were created by these king-rank martial artists. In the process of releasing the murderous hell, the blood pool under the blood prison began to boil. There was a violent fluctuation. Many big arrays were suddenly awakened. They were stimulated by the murderous hell and were resisting the erosion of it. Yi Shiwen sneered and said, "Don't you King of Assassins like to assassinate others to prove yourself? Today, I will kill a King of Assassins to prove myself." Golden dermic powers surged from his body as his aura shot up into the heavens. He did not back down just because his opponent was a king-ranked realm martial artist. Yi Shiwen stood above the blood prison. However, it seemed as if he was in hell. Countless stone tablets of the path of slaughter appeared around his body. These stone tablets were solemn and serene. The most important thing was that each of these stone tablets recorded a person's name. These names had once shaken an entire region. These were the opponents that the Crystal King had beheaded. The names on the stone steels were written in blood, as if they were crying. It was a heart-wrenching sight. It was extremely terrifying. Who knew how many lives had been sacrificed to form this killing path hell? Yi Shiwen felt a dreadful suppression under these steels. Each steel was releasing a dreadful coercion. Moreover, they were arranged in a combination of killing arrays. The resulting power was so great that it seemed as if he was going to be sacrificed alive. "This is my blood death prison. You should be honored to be killed by my blood death prison. From now on, your name will become one of these stone tablets. You will become my future glory and a stepping stone to prove my Tao through killing." As he spoke, those stone steels started to tremble violently. Figures appeared on them one after another, their auras soaring into the sky. Every figure was different, but they were all equally stunning. Looking from afar, one could see that their spiritual chi was soaring into the sky. However, at this moment, their eyes were lifeless, and what was left was only endless resentment. They used to be invincible geniuses who shone brightly. However, they were killed in the end. This resentment would not disappear even after thousands of years. Now, it had become the support of the Crystal King's killing path. Boom! This resentment directly turned into a monstrous sea. Law talismans instantly rushed towards Yi Shiwen. It was like a raging wave hitting the shore, shattering everything. These endless resentment spirits rushed towards Yi Shiwen. They were incomparably terrifying. Every one of these resentment spirits had extraordinary killing techniques. They were not inferior to the ones they had when they were still alive. Facing these incoming resentment spirits, Yi Shiwen remained motionless like a reef in the sea. No matter how the raging waves hit him, he remained unmoved. All kinds of terrifying attacks bombarded him. The 10,000 spell roulette flew out above his head. Thousands of spells spouted out. No matter what kind of enemy it was, they could not escape. There were spells that could restrain them. The terror of the 10,000 spell roulette was finally revealed. This was also the reason why the 10,000 spell king was called one of the strongest kings. King-ranked experts were invincible existences. To be able to move unhindered among king-ranked experts, there was no need to mention how terrifying the 10,000 spell roulette was. Just this 10,000 spell roulette, which seemed to be able to restrain all the great Daos in the world, was already incomparably shocking. At this moment, the 10,000 spell roulette restrained all the attacks of the resentment spirits and blocked them. The spells that erupted from the 10,000 spell roulette shattered all the resentment spirits. This was an amazing scene. This was the true power of the 10,000 spell roulette. If it was not for the environment of the blood prison, even Yi Shiwen would not be able to use it. The amount of spiritual power required was simply as vast as the mountains and the seas. Boom! The Jing King's attack instantly landed. The sword in his hand opened a huge portal. It was the portal to hell, and it enveloped Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen waved the Avicii sword in his hand and rushed forward. Boom! The shocking collision caused Yi Shiwen to retreat again and again. Yi Shiwen's blood surged crazily. In the collision, he suffered a loss. Although the Jing King was only the king of assassins, his strength was clearly above the current Yi Shiwen. You're very good. For a divine lord, your cultivation is already heaven-defying. However, it's a pity that the gap in strength cannot be overcome. The Jing King's voice kept coming. He wanted to attack Yi Shiwen's confidence and make him lose the confidence to continue fighting. However, Yi Shiwen was not moved at all. He just kept looking for the Jing King's position and wanted to give him a fatal blow. However, in this murderous Dao hell, the Crystal King's speed seemed to have increased to the extreme. His figure could appear on every stone tablet. Unless the entire murderous Dao hell was destroyed, it would be impossible to track him. Yi Shiwen realized that he had underestimated the Jing King. Which king didn't have amazing trump cards? In the entire blood prison, there was a blazing light. Many stone tablets were swept by the Avicii sword and exploded. The battle between the two was extremely fierce. On the surface, it seemed that Yi Shiwen was being attacked everywhere. He was completely at a disadvantage and was constantly being attacked. However, his attacks were always a step late. Every time he couldn't hit the Jing King. Even the entire blood prison was alarmed. Many gods woke up from their slumber. Battles might occur in other places, but in the blood prison, unless the enemy had invaded to this extent, Yi Shiwen's divine kingdom was completely unfolded. Yi Shiwen's divine kingdom was completely unfolded. It would be smashed to pieces in an instant, but it would condense again. In this way, it was constantly being smashed and condensed again. Yi Shiwen's attacks were getting fiercer and fiercer. He could already somewhat grasp the Jing King's movements. The mysterious space in his body was crazily analyzing the Jing King's various movements. He could even somewhat predict the Jing King's movements. You still don't want to use your trump card? You won't have the chance if you wait any longer, Yi Shiwen said coldly. At this time, there were wounds all over his body. He looked like a bloody man. During the confrontation with the Jing King, he was also repeatedly injured. However, at this time, he didn't care and didn't hesitate to use his full strength. You don't need to worry about this. Anyway, you will die in my hands, said the Jing King coldly. However, he didn't have the slightest bit of carelessness. The continuous battles had also made him understand Yi Shiwen's tenacity and fearsomeness. He no longer had the confidence to casually kill Yi Shiwen. Unexpectedly, it made him feel the same as when he faced other titled king powerhouses. He had to be extremely careful and look for an opportunity to kill Yi Shiwen in one strike, because one carelessness might cause him to lose his life. Although the revenge of killing Yi Shiwen was very tempting, one must be alive to enjoy it no matter how tempting it was. Suddenly, a huge crystal bowl appeared in his hand. There was a terrible power fluctuating in this bowl. It seemed as if it contained something terrible. Suddenly, this bowl turned over and turned into a monstrous sea. It directly overturned. The space was crushed under the pressure of this sparkling and translucent liquid. It seemed as if it couldn't bear its weight. It shattered one after another. It seemed as if what was overturning wasn't the sea, but the mountains. It was the entire world. It was incomparably spectacular. Die! The Jing King's face revealed a somewhat sinister expression. This is the heavy water extracted from the heavy water. It is the essence of the essence. Even the gods can't bear such a weight. Die for me. The heavy water itself was one of the heaviest substances in the world, and the heavy water extracted from it was the heaviest substance in the world. It was even more terrible than the stars when it was overturned. Yi Shiwen's complexion finally changed. He suddenly swung the Avicii sword in his hand to chop the heavy water. Rumble! The Avicii sword swept across, and the heavy water directly evaporated. However, the heavy water that was overturned was too much. It was too terrifying. Yi Shiwen's sword had no way to completely eliminate the heavy water. Boom! All the heavy water smashed onto Yi Shiwen's body. It was as if countless stars had fallen at the same time. Yi Shiwen's body burst open. Flesh and blood flew everywhere. Even the sound of bones breaking could be heard. The opportunity has finally come. The Jing King's figure flashed and instantly appeared. He slashed towards Yi Shiwen, who had been smashed by the heavy water. Poochies! A sword suddenly erupted and pierced through him. Chapter 2659. The Avicii sword pierced through everything, shattering the sky, and pierced through the body of the Crystal King in one breath. The Jing King's body exploded, and golden blood splashed everywhere. It was an incomparably tragic scene. The divine blood splashed and fell into the blood pool, making the blood pool even more turbulent. Whoosh! With another flash, the Crystal King appeared in the distance, panting heavily. Half of his body was gone, and he was almost completely annihilated. If he hadn't dodged at the critical moment, he would have been dead by now. That ominous sword was much more terrifying than he had imagined. Even though he was the king of assassins, he was almost infected by that ominous aura. But even so, he could only barely suppress it. That blood-red sword light was still wreaking havoc in his body. Even with his strength as a divine king, he could not expel it quickly. It was too terrifying. Although he had escaped, he had no way to further injure Yi Shiwen. He could only watch Yi Shiwen, who had been smashed by the heavy water, recover bit by bit. Yi Shiwen's face did not look good. The heavy water was too terrifying. He had the strength to pull up mountains, and he could easily knock down the sun, moon, and stars. But the essence of the heavy water was more than 100 times heavier than the sun, moon, and stars. Not to mention what kind of treasure it could be refined into, just the heavy water alone was already considered to be infinitely powerful. If it was an ordinary Sage Realm expert, just one drop would be enough to smash them to death. Yi Shiwen withstood so much heavy water without being smashed to death. It was already very rare. This was also because the 10,000 spell roulette protected him at the critical moment. Otherwise, he would not have been able to hold on. Without any other magical powers, just this heavy water alone was extremely terrifying. He suddenly thought of the ancient Phoenix Realm's mighty Phoenix clan. They cultivated the law of gravity, and there were many masters in the clan. This gave him another kind of inspiration, one that could bring out his gilded tyrant form to its peak. But he still needed to verify it one by one later. It's a pity that I couldn't kill you, Yi Shiwen said indifferently. The Crystal King's eyelids twitched. Sure enough, he did it on purpose. He suspected that the whole thing was done on purpose by Yi Shiwen. He did not dodge and took it head-on just to have a chance to counterattack. What a cruel heart! He had seen many people who were ruthless to others, but there were only a few who dared to be ruthless to themselves and even fight to the death. Even though their Tao of assassination seemed like they were in a dangerous situation, in reality, if they missed their target, they would immediately flee far away. They would not expose themselves to danger. A wise man does not stand under a collapsing wall. He had been overconfident. How could a king-rank martial artist not be able to defeat a sage realm martial artist? But he didn't want to really fail miserably in such a simple task. At that moment, in his eyes, Yi Shiwen had suddenly become a little more dangerous and extremely dangerous. It was the first time in history that a sage plane could give him such a feeling. He had never encountered such a situation before. What was even more terrifying was that he had never encountered anyone who dared to treat the king of assassins as prey. Since ancient times, they had always treated others as prey. However, Yi Shiwen's appearance seemed to indicate that he was genuinely treating them as prey. This mentality was even more dangerous than his strength. "You want to kill me?" Jing Wang coldly glanced at him, stalling for time to recover from his wounds. He was not afraid of Yi Shiwen's sneak attack because Yi Shiwen's injuries were more serious than his. "Why? Can't I?" Yi Shiwen sneered. "Or is it that in your line of work, only you are allowed to kill others and others are not allowed to kill you? You are very bold, but it is a pity that bold people are usually long dead," Jing Wang said coldly. "However, I will be an exception," Yi Shiwen said confidently. "Are you still not leaving? Do you think you can leave after a while?" In the Hidden Valley, there was more than one king-rank martial artist in charge. By the time they recovered and Jing Wang did not leave, only death would await him. "You don't have to worry about that. Originally, fleeing far away is our creed. However, I feel something different about you. If I don't kill you, my eyelids will keep twitching. So, you should just die," Jing Wang said coldly as if he was reading a death sentence. Jing Wang actually felt a little uneasy because of Yi Shiwen's existence. In order to kill this trace of uneasiness in the cradle, he decided to take the initiative and kill the source of the danger. "Of course, as long as I don't die today, your blood massacre gang will be wiped out sooner or later," Yi Shiwen said coldly. His eyes were as cold as the winter. Jing Wang's expression changed. Finally, he did not hold back and truly erupted the power of a king-rank martial artist. A terrifying power was released from between his eyebrows. Just now, he did not release his true strength. In order not to alarm the higher-ups of the Hidden Valley, he had hidden his strength and sneaked in. Now that he had exposed his strength, he could not hide it for long. The aura of a king-ranked martial artist spread, and it suddenly became much more terrifying. A wave of power was released. "Now!" Yi Shiwen's eyes flashed. The demon wings on his back instantly opened, and he directly rushed over. Jing Wang had hidden his strength just now. Now he needed some time to recover. This time was Yi Shiwen's opportunity. It was also the biggest flaw of Jing Wang. When he was fighting with Jing Wang, he had madly deduced all kinds of feasible plans. After the deduction, he found that only this plan had a certain possibility of success. Otherwise, facing the king of assassins, his chances of survival were too low. Although he was confident, he was not arrogant. The king of assassins was too terrifying. Swish! A terrifying sword-light covered the sky and fell directly towards Jing Wang. The sky collapsed in an instant. In the distance, the mountains in the blood prison trembled crazily, and a rumbling sound lingered in the ears. The whole world trembled under this sword. Bloody light filled the whole world, and a terrible evil spirit appeared. The blazing bloody light made people feel as if they had fallen into the Avicii hell. A huge energy storm was set off. "Roar!" Jing Wang roared. He had never thought that Yi Shiwen would take advantage of this opportunity to attack. This was a risk in itself. When he unlocked the seal, there would be a moment of weakness, and his aura would not be able to keep up. However, it was only for a moment. Many people would not think of it, let alone take advantage of this moment of weakness. It was simply unthinkable. Some of the gas on his body liquefied, and then solidified into a crystal wall, blocking in front of him. Bang! The peerless collision exploded in an instant. The Avicii sword chi and the crystal wall fiercely collided. The collision formed a storm, annihilating time and space, and rushed into the sky. The sword light pierced the crystal wall in front of Jing Wang and pierced him in one fell swoop. It once again smashed the half of his body that he had painstakingly condensed. Even Jing Wang himself did not expect that he would be pierced by someone like this one day. Who dares to be so presumptuous in my hidden valley? Finally, the voice of the Lord of Flames could be heard. The battle situation here had finally shocked the Lord of Flames. A terrifying aura of a king shrouded the area. Unknowingly, he had already entered the king-ranked realm. After a period of closed-door cultivation, the Lord of Flames had finally entered the king-ranked realm. He had just been conferred the title of king-ranked realm not long ago. Who would have thought that someone would actually sneak into the blood prison? He was instantly shocked. That direction, wasn't it Yi Shiwen's direction? Almost immediately, he knew the other party's target and target. Without a doubt, it was Yi Shiwen. He immediately gathered his forces, and with a big stride, he crossed time and space and arrived at the periphery of the blood pool. At this moment, in an instant, a terrifying force fell from the sky. A long sword cut through the sky, and its target was actually the Lord of Flames. The Lord of Flames was shocked and angry. He quickly stopped in his tracks. The place where he was originally standing was already enveloped by a poisonous gas. It actually corroded the space barrier, revealing the endless chaos within. King of Assassins' hidden demon race. The Lord of Flames was extremely sensitive. He almost immediately sensed the presence of the King of Assassins. What's more, it was the King of Assassins of the hidden demon race. At once, the Lord of Assassins was extremely angry. He had been slapped in the face. He had actually been discovered only after someone had entered his lair. In fact, if not for the intense battle that had alerted him, who had just entered the king-ranked realm, he probably would not have discovered the King of Assassins. Was the Hidden Valley being completely underestimated? What made him even angrier was that the other party seemed to have grasped the opportunity. Now that the King of Assassins was in closed-door cultivation, everyone else in the Hidden Valley had gone to participate in the Alliance Army's meeting. At that moment, in the huge Hidden Valley, he was the only king-ranked formidable martial artist left. What's more, he had just ascended. Although he had just ascended and his strong foundations were already above ordinary initial-stage king-ranked formidable martial artists, he still did not dare to let his guard down when facing the King of Assassins. Hidden Demon Race, the Hidden Valley will not let this matter rest. The Lord of Flames shouted angrily. However, there was no response from the sky at all. There was only a formless aura enveloping the Lord of Flames. If he took another step forward, he would attract a lightning-fast attack. At that moment, Yi Shiwen also heard the Lord of Flames roar. Hidden Demon Race. What a sure-kill situation. Besides the Blood Massacre Society, even the Hidden Demon Race had been invited to send the King of Assassins. They really wanted him dead. However, at that moment, Yi Shiwen did not have the time to care about all this. Instead, he took a step forward and charged forward. The Jing King had been severely injured earlier and had not even fully unleashed his strength. This was his best chance. His eyes were cold, and only the word die appeared in his eyes. Chapter 2660. The Jing King's entire body was glowing, distorting the void. Around him, a terrifying aura appeared. Yi Shiwen's attack had directly caused a serious injury to him, but on the other hand, it seemed to have prompted him to release something. Puchi! An unimaginable wave swept in all directions, surpassing the extreme speed, even surpassing Yi Shiwen's current peak speed. Bang! Yi Shiwen was directly swept by the wave and exploded. His body was torn into pieces, flesh and blood flying everywhere. In the sky, the Jing King also took this opportunity to recover from his injuries. His speed had reached the extreme, and the surroundings had turned into a world of crystals. In this world of crystals, he was truly an invincible king. In the void, Yi Shiwen's true body reformed. His face was pale. It had been a long time since he had experienced such an intense battle. Even the battle with Wu Zimo back then had not left him so severely injured. The terror of a king-ranked realm martial artist was far beyond what he knew. He had thought that the Jing King had lost all means to fight back, but he did not expect that he still had such a hidden trump card. "I did not expect that you still have a trump card," Yi Shiwen said lightly, his expression unchanged. Behind him, the wings of demons stretched out, and in his body, the Phoenix regeneration technique was constantly running. Such a serious injury, even for a master of the Sage Realm, was difficult to fully recover. However, Yi Shiwen's Gilded Tyrant Form's recovery ability was amazing. Coupled with the Phoenix regeneration technique, in just a few breaths, he had already recovered to the peak. Unless the Jing King could kill him in an instant, it would be difficult to kill him. He had already seen some of the combat power of a King Realm Master, and was not that weak. It is useless for you to struggle. In this world, you are the second person to be able to force me to use this move. The first was a King Realm Master, and he is already dead. You will be the second, so you should be honored to be able to stand side by side with a King Realm Master. Jing King said indifferently. In this aspect, he was still not as good as Yi Shiwen. His recovery was slightly slower than Yi Shiwen. At this time, more than half of his body had finally recovered. However, this was enough for him to release his full strength. Although it would only take a split second, but in a fight between experts, it was enough to kill him. Boom! The Crystal King made his move once again. It was as if he had transcended time and space, his speed reaching the extreme. A kilometer radius around Yi Shiwen's body collapsed with a loud bang without any warning. The speed of the collapse was ridiculously fast. The 10,000 method roulette and Tianyuan mirror appeared above his head at this time. The double protection prevented him from being killed. Yi Shiwen had always been proud of his speed. Relying on the devil wings, his speed had always been able to suppress the outstanding heroes. But now, he had encountered an existence that could completely suppress him. Not only was the opponent's cultivation level higher than his, but also completely specialized in speed. Even if the quality of the power technique was inferior to Yi Shiwen's, but relying on its tyrannical power, it could suppress Yi Shiwen. Your speed is very fast, but it's useless. In this crystal domain, I am the king. This is my way of proving my Tao. I killed a king with the crystal domain, and that's how I became a king. The Crystal King's voice came from all directions, trying to affect Yi Shiwen's judgment and mind, even to the extent of making the enemy surrender without a fight. This is the 10,000 method roulette of the celestial race, right? Not bad, it suits me. With such a divine tool, coupled with my attack power and defense, no one can do anything to me anymore. Yi Shiwen's expression did not change. He only said coldly, "Then let's see if you have the ability to take it." Boom! 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 The Crystal King's attacks fell continuously, coming from all directions like raindrops falling. Only the 10,000 method roulette and Tianyuan mirror could withstand the attacks of a titled king-level expert. If there were other things, they would have already collapsed. What kind of divine tool could withstand the attacks like a storm? Yi Shiwen's counterattack was also extremely fierce. His Avicii sword was coming from all directions, and the corrosion of the Avicii sword was forcibly suppressed by him. Relying on the Mingxin ancient tree to completely suppress and absorb the Avicii sword, sword chi was coming from all directions. This also made the Crystal King incomparably afraid. Otherwise, it would not be so difficult to deal with a junior of the Sage Realm. You are very good, but that's all you are. As soon as the Crystal King's voice fell, a terrible shock wave swept over. It was all the power of crystal, as if the entire blood prison had been crystallized. What was more frightening was that this was not an ordinary crystal, but a kind of law, the Crystal King's natal law. Originally, only his right hand was crystallized, but now his whole body seemed to be made of crystal, looking very powerful. Boom! Yi Shiwen's whole body, along with the 10,000 method roulette and Tianyuan mirror, were blasted away. That crystal shock wave actually penetrated into his body, and his whole body began to crystallize, which made him feel a little numb. It's time to end this. The Jing King let out a roar. Fighting with the junior until now, no matter what the result was, his reputation would not be good if it was spread out. For an assassin, not having an illustrious reputation to intimidate the opponent was a big deal in itself. His figure emerged, and a crystal sword appeared in his hand. He wanted to completely behead Yi Shiwen, kill him with one sword, kill him instantly, and not give him time to recover. Explode! Yi Shiwen suddenly shouted. Suddenly, there seemed to be some kind of power awakening within the Jing King's body under Yi Shiwen's guidance. Unexpectedly, the Jing King's body instantly burst open. Even his crystallized body unexpectedly burst open. The Crystal King staggered, and his face suddenly became ugly. He was actually tricked by Yi Shiwen, and there was still Yi Shiwen's sword energy hidden in his body, which was detonated at the critical moment, causing terrible damage. Ordinary sword energy naturally could not hurt the Crystal King, but if it was the sword energy of the Avicii sword, it would be completely different. Fall into the Avicii hell for me, Yi Shiwen shouted, and the Avicii sword in his hand once again burst out in astonishing sword light. He seized this rare opportunity and instantly chopped off half of the Crystal King's body. Although the Crystal King was terrifying, Yi Shiwen, with the Avicii sword in his hand, had the strength to threaten a titled king-level expert. The Crystal King, who had not fully recovered, was now seriously injured. He finally realized that he had underestimated this junior. Yi Shiwen's methods were terrifying, and his faith was also terrifying. Such a person, even in the most extreme environment, was not broken and still thought of counterattacking. At this time, the Crystal King finally had a somewhat timid thought, or rather, he had truly acted in accordance with the assassin's code of conduct. He was still too greedy and wanted to obtain the 10,000 law roulette. Otherwise, he should not have been so greedy when his first attack failed. He still thought too highly of himself, or should it be said that he had underestimated Yi Shiwen. Shua! The Crystal King's speed was unparalleled. He dragged half of his body and fled towards the sky. Yi Shiwen's expression was indifferent. A terrifying power rushed out of his body and rushed to his whole body. At this time, he seemed to be experiencing some kind of transformation. Something in his body had completely broken, and the power in his body was like a flood pouring out in torrents. Boom! Yi Shiwen suddenly stepped on the ground, and the void shattered. That crystal world, in just an instant, was completely shattered. The demon wings behind him spread out, and his whole body turned into a ball of light, and he chased after the Crystal King. Junior, don't go too far. Seeing that Yi Shiwen actually chased after him, the Crystal King was so scared that his soul almost left his body. He was extremely ashamed and angry. Being chased by a junior who had not even reached the titled king level would be a stain that he would never be able to wash off for the rest of his life. And the cause of all this was his arrogance. With the strength of the king of assassins, even a true titled king-level master would tremble with fear. In the end, the Crystal King chose a direction that he was least adept at, a frontal assault. If it had been any other king-level master in the previous battle, the result might have been Yi Shiwen's first step to collapse. At this time, the Crystal King finally understood how arrogant he was before. He had underestimated this monster, who had just become famous in the world with the corpses of so many evildoers as a foil. Now it was time for him to pay the price for his arrogance. So what if I bully you too much? Yi Shiwen's expression was cold. From the moment the Crystal King set foot here, he had no intention of letting him go. He used the blood of a king-level master to warn the heroes of the world that his era had begun. After being repeatedly injured, and the crystal world being trampled by Yi Shiwen, the Crystal King's speed was not as fast as before. In just a moment, he was actually caught up. Yi Shiwen stepped down, and the sky and earth split. It was as if the world was shaking, and everything was being destroyed. Bang! There was a loud sound and a scream. The Jing King screamed in pain. His physical body had actually been torn apart by Yi Shiwen's foot. It was extremely tragic. Immediately after, a sword light fell and minced his physical body and spirit into pieces. Even if he was a king realm martial artist, under such an attack, there was no way he could survive. Yi Shiwen waved the demon-calling banner and Tianyuan mirror, and ate the flesh and blood of the Crystal King. Inside the demon-calling banner, many powerful demon kings were transforming. Perhaps they could really transform into king-level masters. Tianyuan mirror was also undergoing the most crucial step of transforming into a top-grade divine tool. Once it crossed this step, it would become a genuine top-grade divine tool. With its own foundation, it could even become a powerful divine tool that was not inferior to the 10,000 spell roulette. Moreover, this was his life's divine tool. It had been refined along the way, and the 10,000 spell roulette could not compare with it. Bang! In this silence, suddenly, the space around Yi Shiwen's body suddenly shattered. A short sword exploded, and a sword light directly swept through the space, slashing towards Yi Shiwen and the King of Assassins. However, at this critical moment, Yi Shiwen calmly raised his hand and blocked the sword. What? You have entered the titled king levels. In the void, an extremely shocked voice came. You are wrong. I have only entered the late stage of the Sage level. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.